This conference will now be recorded.
And welcome to this third network school to everybody. I had prepared a few slides thinking that we would have also some external people here from the morning, but I can see that we just have people from the consortium, so there is no need to explain who we are and why we are here. So I thought it would be nice to make a start with this picture from last year's winter school. From the winter school we hosted in Naples. It was the second network school exactly 1 year ago. A beautiful picture shot in a fantastic sunny day. It seems a completely different geological era if we compare it to today, and hopefully we will be able to go back to something similar very soon. Nevertheless, I mean, we have a very tight schedule as a consortium, as a project, and we need to run our network events. We have started with our network schools since the very beginning of the project. We have hosted our first network school in Sheffield in June 2019. And then the event we had in Naples last year was the second network school, which was mainly focused on methods and models for evaluating the transition towards the circular economy from an environmental point of view. We also had, and it was May 2020, there is a slight mistake on my slide. We had the project meeting with industry, which we should have organized in Brussels, but it was the first big event in our network which was affected by the pandemic. So we got some experience of running this type of events online. We were hoping to be able to run this event live, but unfortunately it is not yet the case. We should have been all in Thessaloniki today for a fantastic week together, but we are still forced to run events online. There are some positives to these. In the previous events, we have been able to run online. We have been able really to maximize the participation of external people, and this has provided us with a lot of benefits. And also the panel of experts we have put together for this week is impressive. Probably if we had to put together the same panel of experts with people traveling, it would have been more difficult, not to mention the fact that we are saving carbon emissions, we are minimizing our environmental impact as a network. A few words then on the need for this event. We will be talking about the need for innovative business models, entrepreneurship for the transition towards a circular economy. This is more and more acknowledged in the literature as a necessity. This is an image I took from a recent paper from Thomas Bowens et al. And we hosted a seminar with Thomas a few weeks ago regarding his recent paper. It is apparent now that there could be multiple pathways for the transition towards the circular economy. a top-down one, a bottom-up one. We could have different versions of a circular economy, a more planned one, one based on eco-modernist approaches, but also versions that rely on bottom-up mechanisms, even peer-to-peer mechanisms. So in all the cases, it is apparent the need for fostering circular economy entrepreneurial solutions, for making sure we are able to create ecosystems which can foster bottom-up solutions for the transition. And this is even more relevant in the current COVID-19 scenario we are going through, and the prospect of economic recession, crisis, and the need for prompt recovery, for creating new jobs to compensate for the ones that have been lost. So the whole week will be aimed to give us some ideas in order to deal with the bottom half of this quadrant, if you want. In the past network schools, we have been probably more interested with the upper half of it. Now it's time for us also to turn our attention to the bottom-up version of a circular economy, and this is what we will be doing in the next week. Also, we will try to equip our ESRs with some basic skills when it comes to business planning, when it comes to the creation of innovative business models. This is because we don't think that all our ESRs, after their 3 years in the project, need to continue their career as researchers. But we would also like to have some of them creating their own enterprises, implementing some circular business models. So this is really all from my side. We have an exciting week in front of us, with mornings that will be open to the public, with lectures, seminars, presentation from circular economy entrepreneurs, business leaders, and academics. And then most of the afternoons will be just devoted to the ESRs of the ReTraCE project, for them to perform collaborative work. And at the end of the week, there will be the opportunity for them to pitch their business idea in front of a panel of experts. That's really all from my side. A very short introduction, just to give everybody the context of what we are trying to do together during this exciting week. So stay safe, stay with us, most of all, have fun with the activities of this week. I would just like to quickly invite Panos Ketikidis from SEERC, the main organizer of this week, along with Adrian Solomon, to add a few more words about the fantastic work they've done to put together such an exciting week. Over to you, Panos.
Professor Genovese, thank you very much for the introduction. We will see by Friday if that was an exciting week for our ESRs, of course, okay? And we like you to be tough with us, but we think we put a program that will be an exciting, and you will take with you all your life some key takeaways, and hopefully our goal of this week by Friday to have your own, venture, your own company. That's actually what we're planning to do. And through the 5 days, we will try, let me see now if I can share. I don't know if you can see my screen. No, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, let me go to this. No, It's okay, but okay. ReTraCE opening. No, this one. It's okay. I have an issue, so don't worry. I'll keep going like this because I cannot open it. I say, sir, do I have to do anything else, Andrea? Say,
You just
sir.
have to click on share.
Yeah, I do click on share, but doesn't allow me to click on that.
Don't know.
Yeah, don't worry. It's okay. Because it doesn't allow me to click on share. It doesn't give me this access. Maybe someone has to give me access.
Yeah, it says that you are the new presenter.
Okay, let me see. What about now? Can you see it now?
No.
Not yet.
Try now. Can you try now?
Yes, let me try again. Say, sir, it doesn't. It says screen. No, it doesn't. Maybe application. Maybe if I click here. What about now? No, it's okay.
Yes, it's good now.
Okay, it came up. Okay, good. Thank you. And sorry, I apologize for this. Okay, what we will try to do, Professor Genovese, first of all, let me start with this. I hope you and your loved ones to be healthy and well, and please stay safe until we pass, all of us, this pandemic. That is, as you know, is nobody will expect this, and we wish, of course, to have you in Thessaloniki so we can show you our hospitality. But unfortunately, we could not do it this time. Hopefully, another time. Now, what we have 5 full days that we try to put things together. And thank you very much, the speakers, of course. Let me start with them, that they dedicated their time to go through this. We have 5 exciting days, and the goal is just for you to know that we will start in day 1 to give you some ideas of how actually, what is innovation, how actually you do a business model canvas, how you start up an idea. Then we will have a case study of a speaker that will show you actually a circular economy business model. On the second day, we will go with more speakers, and then you will understand of how maybe by the second day already you will have a draft of your business idea. Third day, you will do a pitch, meaning that you have front of people, you will actually present that idea. And on the fourth day, you will see actual companies and entrepreneurs that they are actually have founders, that you will see cases of startup ideas. And on the last day, you will present in front of entrepreneurs, founders, and investors your business idea. And of course, do not panic because we are here to help you, okay? So this is the teams, you know your teams, and that you have, and of course, after we finish the lectures, we have these 2 hours afternoons that you have to get together in order to brainstorm, to identify an idea, a possible idea that will have impact to the society. And then after that, we will show you some tools of how this idea could put it in a canvas. We call it business model canvas. You will put the idea there. You will go through many iterations until you find out actually what will be the impact to the society. And after that this will be your first startup in your life if you never went through that before. Okay, so this is the first day, and of course, the first speaker, as you can see, will talk about technological innovation patterns, grasping the opportunity and handling the threats. Then we will try to keep the logistics and finish always on time, and so we'll have 5 minutes breaks. Each time will be the same. Then we will go, actually, the next lecture is about creative thinking and business model canvas. At that point, hopefully, when we finish my session, you will be ready to understand what you have to do to deliver on the 5th day. Then we'll have a longest break, as you can see, 11:40 to 12. And then we will go to another, speaker that we have that will be a real case that you will see, of how you start a company, what are the issues, and how actually you finalize and you make this happen. Then you will have another break, and finally you will understand, because at the end of the day, of course, you must understand the finance, because most of the founders, from my experience, they don't have, a basic understanding of finance. And when you have your own company, at least, I'm not saying to become an accountant, but you have to understand the basic finance, because you have to go in front of people to look for money in order to scale up your company. And then at the end, my colleague and Dr. Adrian Solomon from the Southeast European Research Center, again, always under the umbrella of Professor Genovese, will come up with the conclusions and the task allocation. And as Professor Genovese said, you will have 2 hours, the ESRs, in order to get together, in order to identify a possible problem, and that problem to become, let's say, a venture, a company. So this is actually what will be the first day. And I think we're ahead, of please feel free. I would say what I will suggest you is, at the end of the day, if possible, write down what was your key takeaways of the day, every day. And if possible, mail them to me, all of you, individually, or to Professor Genovese or to Dr. Adrian Solomon, because that will be something, keep some notes and say, okay, this is for the day, this is what stay in my mind, okay, that maybe I can use it and utilize it later on in my life. And as Professor Andrea Genovese said, okay, some of you may like to continue your academic career as researchers, or later on, lecturers, professors. And some of you, I would suggest you, also to think about, if you have this great idea, why not to make it your own business? Okay, I'm not saying that everybody, some people, they say I'm not born to have my own business, but if you see big cases, I won't say the names, but, Microsoft, Apple, if you see, their profile, they were people that actually, they didn't have the profile of entrepreneurs, and you see what they have done, in their lives, of the big platforms that all of us actually were working. So do not say no, because no for me is next opportunity. And another thing, do not be afraid of the fail, because as we know, fail means first attempt in learning, okay? But you have to learn from your fails. That's the most important thing. If you learn from your fails, so you cannot do the second time the same mistake, this is something that is very important to remember. Another tip that I would give you, that people that they go startup founders in Silicon Valley, that they are looking for money, for this idea that you will come up by Friday, usually they prefer people that they fail the first time, in order, but they ask them, what did you learn from your fails? And if they've been convinced that they learn from the fails, this is great. They give them, they finance them for the new business idea that they have. So think about that. And another thing that I see from people, from my other role, myself as a business angel, I see most of the founders, they say, okay, this is not actually, I don't have the skills of entrepreneur. But one key takeaway I would like to give you for the day for startups is, first of all, do not bring, in your new business idea, your friend, or your friend, your dog, or your family, if these people are not complementary to your idea, to your vision that you have for the idea. So, for example, if you have, 3 founders that are just software engineers, this is not a good mix. You may have one that is software engineer, the other one could be, for example, person from the finance, and another person maybe from design, and depending of the product or service that you want to take out. And a final thing before I go, and give a little bit extra minutes to our first speaker, is remember that, okay, Rome was not built in one day. You have to be passionate, and the best ingredient thing, for a founder is to have a passion and have a vision of what, if they want to make a big, innovation, to have an impact worldwide, you must have this vision, in your mind, and say, why not you? I think you could do it. This is actually my initial introduction. We'll have more time to discuss this during my session, and of course with all the other sessions that they are excellent because we've been through that. And I wish you to have a very successful day. Please keep your key takeaways every day. I would say, of course, depend on every lecturer, but I would prefer to interrupt whenever you have questions so we can have you there and engage through the lectures, not just to be, for us talking to you without any engagement from your side. So thank you very much for being with us. Stay healthy, stay safe. And then what I would like to do now is to go straight away with 2 minutes ahead of time to go to our first speaker, Dr. Roberto Cerchioni from the University of Naples, I'd like to welcome him. I'd like to thank him for his time, and his topic is about technological innovation patterns, grasping the opportunity and handling the threats. So the floor is yours, I could say, Roberto, if you are, you can start.
Thank you a lot. Good morning, everybody. Are you able to visualize my presentation?
Roberto, we can just see half of it. Can
Okay.
you full screen?
Yes, we can see now your screen. Yes, much better. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So before starting my presentation, I would firstly to thank the Professor Andrea Genovese, Adrian Solomon, and all the other colleagues and organizers for involving me in this presentation and in this third ReTraCE Network School. And also I would like to thank the support of the colleagues of the University of Naples Partenopè, and in particular Renato Passaro, Sergio Olgiati, et al. So the main aim of my presentation of today is to evaluate how technological innovation patterns can support innovative business models, and in particular for the promotion of circular economy. So a few days ago, I read a report of a survey of an analysis conducted by the Complete Spectrum and published by the Tech Republic. And this study was published a month before the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. The results of this study highlighted that the 94% of company managers said that digital transformation was high on their list of priorities, and 51% say that they were moving on these priorities in the next months. This was the situation before the pandemic. Moreover, in the same time, a separate YouGov study conducted in the same month found that the 54% of employees don't understand the meaning of digital transformation. And when more than half of employees are confused by the meaning of a top business priority, there is not exactly a condition for success, for entrepreneurial or for company success. Also in this line, McKinsey analyzed that 70% of digital transformation attempts failed. And so in this evolving environment, digital transformation has become a casual term that can mean anything and therefore frequently means nothing. So one department in an organization may think of digital transformation as a solution like a software as a service, but another can view digital transformation as a centralizing customer data. I read a few days ago a recent headline on the digital transformation of Colgate-Palmolive that cited the TikTok videos as the main result of the digital transition and the digital transformation. So according to the former Procter & Gamble Vice President Tony Saldana, the term digital transformation can be used as a fancy term. And also digital transformation, to be precise, is the rewiring of an existing enterprise so that its physical product can become smarter, its go-to-market models can become more digital, and also its internal operations can become at least 2 times as efficient. This is a definition of a company managers that is investing in the digital transformation and in Industry 4.0. But this journey to the digital transition can be divided in 5 main stages, and all the way from automating the typical accounting kind of stuff, which is the stage 1, and through the stage 5, where not only have changed the process, but also people and other rewiring, and also the entire organization culture becomes completely digital at the end of this long process. Being extremely clear about what we are aiming at and being very precise on what stage we are on that journey is the first main critical issue that most companies, and in particular most startups, face. Because without clarity on what we mean by digital and by digital transformation, there is no way to drive transformation and to manage all the technological patterns in order to grasp the opportunity and to handle the threats. The keywords of digital transformation, or more in general of digitalization and automation, have been on everyone's lips for years, also before the pandemic. And many companies, and especially SMEs, have been reluctant to tackle these issues because they seemed too far away from us. And the benefit was not immediately apparent in terms of financial benefit in particular. However, these keywords are not always about the use of very hard technologies, very complex technologies like artificial intelligence, like blockchains or robotic process automation. But even on a small case, the digitalization can start and support everyday work and everyday operations. So companies that have already been involved in the digitalization of their process in the past are now at an advantage after the pandemic, as they are able to offer their employees a smooth workflow in the home office. In fact, despite there is a consolidated body of literature that analyzes the topic of digital transformation and the processes of technology management in both large companies, small and medium enterprises. On the contrary, as regards the startups, the literature is still unstructured and more in details, while the literature proposes different approach for dealing with the digitalization in consolidated enterprises. Only in recent times, an increasing number of contributions have been focusing on digital technology management in startups. And these contributions focus mainly on the critical factors that can drive or hinder the technological innovation paths processes, as well the impact of specific digital technology on enterprise performance. I can consider as one of the first pioneers of the conceptualization of startup, that is Steve Blank, that defined the startup as an organization formed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. But in today's competitive environment, due to the scarcity of tangible assets that characterizes in particular a startup, it is necessary to leverage on intangible resources like knowledge, like technology, intellectual capital, in order to achieve these scalability objectives. So to investigate this topic and to cover this literature gap with Piera Centobelli, Emilio Esposito, and Renato Passero and Ivana Quinto, we conducted an empirical analysis on the degree of adoption of intra and inter-organizational digital technologies with a survey conducted in the entire population of about 6,000 of Italian firms listed in the Register of Innovative Startups. And the main aim of this research was to investigate the digital attitude of these companies, of these startups. The main results of this study, we can see the main results in the table, and these results highlighted that the adoption level of both intra and inter organizational digital technologies on average is very low. And the most part of Italian startups use on average 2 different inter-organizational tools and only 2 different intra-organizational tools and only 1 inter-organizational tool. On the contrary, only 1 startup out of the 6,000 of the entire population has adopted 6 intra-organizational digital tools and 5 inter-organizational digital tools. We can note that no Italian startup adopts all the digital tools considered in our taxonomy. That included very common, very basic, cheap and easy to use digital tools like social networks, customer relationship management systems, content management systems, and so on. So this means that on average, there is a very scarce adoption level of both inter and intra-organizational digital technologies. In this study, we have also identified 4 main startup profiles. A first area that regards startups that have still to acquire awareness of the strategic value of technology management and more in particular of a digital attitude. And the startup located in this area have still not invested in intra and inter-organizational tools in order to support their business process. And we have named this area as the area of digital followers. Secondly, the startups that are localized in the second area are about the 7%, and these startups tend to use mainly intra-organizational tools. And the fact that these startups do not adopt inter-organizational digital technologies specifically dedicated to their business process can highlight that they are investing in digital infrastructures or are exploiting the technical and the technological potential they already have, but not actually leverage on the social reputation and on social technologies. Therefore, this area is the area of the digital influencers. Thirdly, the startups that are located in the third area are investing in the field of social media and are exploiting the social potential that the founders could already have because they are social monsters in many cases. Therefore, they have the profile of social influencer that characterize the companies and the startups that are located in this third area. And finally, in the most desirable area of the digital leaders, there are only few startups that have a full perception of the strategic value of a digital attitude and therefore can explore the potential of a variety of both intra and inter-organizational digital technologies. What about the past? An evolution. How we can suggest good strategies for these startups. In particular, there is a possibility of evolution towards this best profile of digital leaders, and to achieve this evolution, it is necessary that all the companies can improve their competitive performance through the use of appropriate digital technology. So not only the inclusion of several digital technologies, but of those technologies that are aligned with the business model of this company. So a first possible path can be represented in red, and it is a balanced evolutionary path where these startups can introduce gradually and mutually the inter-organizational and the intra-organizational tools in order to follow a strategy of acquisition and a strategy of adoption of digital technology. This path in practice is very rare, is not very common. On the contrary, there is a second possible path represented in orange that is an unbalanced path, which can lead startups to favor firstly the adoption of inter-organizational tools and then the adoption of intra-organizational ones. So this can be defined as a social evolutionary path for these companies. Finally, a third possible path represented in blue is an unbalanced path and can be based favoring the adoption of intra-organizational tools in order to migrate in the technical influencer area in a first step, and then integrate the use of inter-organizational tools in order to migrate in the best area, the area of digital leader in a second step. So it is a two-step procedure, it is a two-step process that is very recommended to these startups. So this can be defined as a sort of technical evolutionary path. And currently in practice, only a limited group of Italian startups seems to follow this evolutionary path, becoming firstly technical influencer, and then at the end of the process, digital leaders. We can summarize the results of this analysis, highlighting a situation of a generally weakness of the digital attitude of startups for both inter and intra digital tools. These results are in line with the previous research conducted by Stilla in 2018, so in the past years, which analyzed the level of diffusion of various basic digital tools like an email, like a social network. Therefore, startups may take advantage of the impact of digital technologies by better exploiting the opportunity offered by the digital transformation. Startups typically do not have dedicated financial resources to monitor the process of the technology management innovation. And from the technological provider's perspective, this study shows that startups typically do not have dedicated resources to monitor the process of innovation in the field of digital transformation and digital technology management. However, they may well represent a significant market for digital providers, and therefore, to catch this opportunity, it is necessary to create not only a new segment dedicated to the startups, but also direct channels of communication between the startups on one side and the digital providers on the other. But in my opinion, to achieve this aim, also policymakers should have a role and should create specific policy measures in order to develop a balanced adoption of intra and inter digital technologies, digital tools, in order to evolve to a balanced path, as we have seen in the previous slide. So let's turn to the present, in which the coronavirus has had an impact on the working life of everyone. And this is where the most diverse situations come into play. In fact, in many cases, we were forced to move from the office to the home office, and this situation happened from one day to the next. And we were forced to work in a more decentralized way and to organize our daily tasks and activity in a virtual mode from a day to another. However, we know that home office not always is a possible and it is a sustainable solution. And this present situation provides an opportunity to take a more intensive look at digitalization and at digital transition, of course. So in my opinion, the coronavirus will not end tomorrow, and therefore there is certainly room for lateral thinking and also for forward thinking in these days and in the future months. So which capabilities we have in the present, which technological capabilities we have? In particular, the main industrialized countries have already taken action before the pandemic to support many industrial sectors in order to grasp the opportunity of the revolutionary phenomenon that was called as Industry 4.0. And therefore, large companies as well as SMEs, startups, are receiving funds and financial benefits to adopt the enabling technologies that we can see in the 9 technological areas we can visualize in this slide. And in particular, the main benefits that are characterizing all these companies that are conducting projects in the area of Industry 4.0 concern mainly the flexibility, the integration, the security, the sustainability, and the product innovation as priorities. Therefore, organizations are all feeling the sudden and increasing the urgency of this digital transition, of this digital wave, but there is still a lack of clarity on what digital transformation actually means. In fact, the definitions vary widely between companies and within companies. And in my perspective, when a term can be stretched to mean just about anything, it is the moment it starts to mean nothing in the practice. And also urgency without clarity can be a very risky combination for organization and also for individuals. So we have to manage many threats in this context. I would like to cite the author of Why Digital Transformation Fail, Tony Saldana, that in this manual put this way, declaring that the biggest challenge in today's world is the language related to the digital transition. In fact, the term has been co-opted by every IT person selling anything from an email upgrade to the most complex solutions like artificial intelligence or machine learning, deep learning, and so on. Around the world, all the organizations are spending about $1 trillion a year on digital transformation, but we should consider that the 70% of those transformations fail. And this situation is happening mainly because the language prevents business and also public sector from setting the right hand goal in this domain, in this context. And it also prevents them, this organization, from following a very effective and efficient approach to getting this solution. So it makes sense that digital transformation will vary from a bank versus a university versus a toothpaste brand or to another company operating in different industries and in different domains. But it is critical for all the teams operating in the digital transition within an organization to have clarity, in particular, which is the aim to catch this opportunity, which process we should re-engineer, we should improve in our company, how we can improve also the lives of people working as employees in the organization. And as the CEO of a wire and plastic product company that is driving also on the use of digital technologies in the field of circular economy, this CEO, Mark Red, said in a recent interview that what organizations want to do to achieve this digital transformation is to be precise and talk about the technology which is at the heart of the digital transformation. So the main problem is this need of clarity and to align this clarity with the company aims, with the company strategies, with the company business models that you will analyze in the following lectures, in the following presentations of the other colleagues that have been involved in the program of this winter school. So let's focus more in depth on the circular economy business models, and in particular on the enabling technologies and on the role that these technologies are having in the impact also on circular economy business models. In another previous study conducted with colleagues of the Polytechnic of Milan, we found that the key enabling technologies of Industry 4.0 can be very useful to accelerate some circular economy targets and to enhance also sustainable competitiveness as well as smart growth of small and medium enterprises, large companies, and also the startups. However, in order to achieve this practice aim, there is the necessity, the necessity to involve the managerial, the manager, and also to have a managerial commitment in this adoption process. In fact, if managers are aimed to spread their expertise and their capabilities to the entire organization in order to create a culture of circular economy and use the technology as a support for this culture, not as an aim, but as a support. And also in this study, we have analyzed that in order to design a circular business model, companies have to implement a set of relevant managerial practices supporting the technological capabilities. And these practices can be specific for each dimension of the business model, in particular for the value creation, but also for the value transfer and the value capture. However, in this context, there is still a lack of empirical evidence on how the different enabling technologies reported in the Industry 4.0 domain can be applied in practice, can be applied by different companies to reach specific circular economy targets. And also the role of managerial commitment is even more relevant to explore in future research studies. And in particular, in my perspective, further investigation is needed to deepen how the identified managerial practice for value creation, for value transfer, and also for value capture can be implemented specifically for each kind of company and for each kind of industry, because we cannot make generalizations in this content. A technological formal that could work in any company, in any domain, in any industry. It is impossible to achieve the same, but we should to contextualize the use of these technologies. In this evolving environment, in order to catch the opportunity and in order to handle the threats represented by the technological innovation for the organizations operating in different contexts and in different industries, it is necessary to manage also research, education, technology transfer activities. And in particular, these issues are crucial in organizations operating in different industries, operating also in different domains, and are very important also in the university context. In fact, today there is much talk of the university first, second, and third missions, indicating the missions of research, the first mission, the mission of teaching and therefore the education, that is the second mission, and also the technology transfer that is recognized as the third university mission. I like to integrate also a fourth ethical and social mission for the university, the mission of democratizing the research, the education, and the third mission and the technology transfer. And technologies can have an opportunity to support these different missions, these different activities. In the next slide, I will compare with you the main pros and cons, the main opportunities and threats that are characterizing research, education, technology transfer, and also social and ethical missions. And I will try to compare with you two different moments, the pre and post digital transformation, in order to analyze the main threats, but also to analyze the main opportunities that we have. So let's start from the pre-digitalization pros affecting all our research activities. Any research activity starts from the study of the contribution that have been published on a given topic in order to identify an appropriate research question that will be answered through the use of a robust and adequate methodology. And doing this before the digitalization meant spending a lot of time in a library. And in my perspective, the pleasure of visiting a library in search of a book, in a very long search in many cases of a book, is a pro for those with the curiosity and the passion that in most cases characterize those who conduct research and the academics in particular. That pleasure of reading a book with a cover and the pages of paper that no any tablet or laptop can return to us. The pleasure of having also managers to fill out a survey in person in order to conduct our empirical analysis on a topic, in order to conduct our survey, our quantitative studies, and so on. Or to do an interview with a manager or an organizational member of a company in person, which usually begins and ends with a strong handshake, not with a bye-bye using only a technological support. And also the necessity and the possibility to involve a panel of experts in a classroom and take lots of business cards that can be used for future synergies, for future collaborations, or maybe for starting a friendship with our colleagues, with our friends. Let's turn to the pre-digitalization cons that affected the research activities. In particular, for instance, having to take an hour by train in order to interview a manager of a company. And after these hours, these long hours spent in the train, we can understand after a few minutes that the person identified and the person found and the person interviewed in person was not the right person, was not the most suitable person to answer our research questions. So we can have a loss of time in this situation without the support with digitalization and with a previous call with this person before a vis-a-vis meeting, a face-to-face meeting. As for the post-digitalization pros that are affecting research, we can reduce the time to collect all the articles and all the books on a given topic by using academic databases like Scopus, like Scholar, Web of Knowledge, and so on. And these academic databases allow us to find all the necessary source in few seconds, with not the necessity to visit in a long time a library. And also these allow us to automatically filter these books, these papers, these proceedings. We can, in few seconds, filter them by subject area, by country, by authors, by journals, etc. Through the use of digitalization, we can improve also the possibility of submission of a questionnaire to companies worldwide. and we can spend a few seconds to submit a questionnaire to companies worldwide without the necessary to have a call or to have a face-to-face meeting with those companies. So we can improve the probability to achieve good results for our quantitative research using these instruments, using this digital support. Or automatically transcribe the content of an interview with a company manager or with an employee for our qualitative case studies in this second situation. Or we can use the technology to analyze in an automatic way a text, using, for instance, the content analysis or the artificial intelligence tools that can be used for conducting content analysis. Let's shift to the post-digitalization cons that are characterizing research, and in particular conducting an entire analysis of a literature on a topic by synthesizing the content of all the sources found. And after this process, we can discover only at the end that there is another scientific article that did exactly the same thing already existed in our manuscript, in our study. So this is a cons of this transition. In fact, in such a case, if I tend not to read all the articles in a complete way, but if I tend to analyze only the content in an automatic way, in this situation, I will certainly not be able to critically analyze these literature sources, and also to make my analysis, my personal analysis, my critical analysis of the scientific literature in a unique and in a complementary study that can be compared to the review conducted, for instance, by someone else in the past. In this situation, if I use the technology as a support, but not a paper writer, as an automatic technology for writing and for analyzing the entire research, the entire papers, in this situation, it will be the uniqueness of my mind and also my creative perspective that will guarantee an interpretation, a critical interpretation of any article. And in this situation, my articles will be always unique and complementary to the previous research that I can find and can be very similar as for the research aims, for instance. To be able to do this, I must be supported by the good use of digital technologies, without trying to replace our creative intelligence with the exclusive use of technology. And on this specific topic, I suggest a book, The Rise of Creative Class, that was written by Richard Florina and regards the theory of creative capital, explaining these issues. Let's shift to the pre-digitalization pros that are affecting not research, but in this case, the education and the teaching activities. So in this context, we have the opportunity to participate in face-to-face lessons with the professor, the exclusive way before digitalization to have lessons conducted in a face-to-face mode, in a vis-a-vis manner, and we can ensure the interaction in this way, but also the ability to ask even stupid or very common questions in the classroom and have an answer by the professor without leaving an immutable trace on platforms like Google Meets, like Zoom, and the other platforms that we are using to digitalize our teaching activities. As for the pre-digitalization cons that are affecting education, we should consider that much knowledge remains always not formalized. And if I had a fever during one lesson, I will never be able to hear it again, proposed in the same inspirational way, for instance, as presented by my professor in that morning of class. And I can only limit myself to reading it filtered from the notes of a colleague, perhaps even with a bad handwriting and synthetic to the maximum degree. Without the digitalization, I have not alternatives to study and to follow this lesson. And we can move also in this case to the post-digitalization pros, in particular the opportunity to use virtual and augmented reality device in our teaching, in our education activities, in order to learn in a more immersive way. In addition, as a pro, we can have the opportunity to be able to review all the lessons remotely, even if I am absent from the most inspirational lesson of my life. As in my personal case, it was a lesson on knowledge management topic that then has become my research topic. And if personally I hadn't attended that lesson, I probably wouldn't have been a researcher now, and I wouldn't have been lucky enough to travel the world to present the results of our research activities, and maybe to be here to tell you now to tell out this story, these aspects. Shifting to the post-digitalization cons, there is a lack of knowledge management practices, and in particular team working practice, for instance, but also other practice like problem solving, brainstorming, case-based reasoning, that are very useful activities that are very hard to conduct in a virtual way, exclusively in a virtual way. So if we turn to the technology transfer mission, as for the pre-digitalization situation, we were forced to take a flight to meet a colleague in person, and also, for instance, we for attending a school, or for attending a conference, a fair, and to meet also a colleague in person in order to start a collaboration on a research project. And in this situation, I can say, what a nice obligation we had when we were forced to take a flight also for attending a one-day meeting. Now that this situation is impossible for the pandemic. Or the opportunity to go to a technology fair or to an international conference only to select a potential partner, for instance, in order to have the opportunity to meet a potential project partner, and catching the opportunity by this situation also to visit a new country during this conference, during this meeting. Or maybe the opportunity to drink a knowledge coffee that seems to us as sweet as that of our kitchen. Also, if this knowledge cafe, this knowledge coffee was in a different country, very far from our kitchen. And in particular, we can before the digitalization, we can think about a project in a group. We can be able to think about a project in a group, looking at it schematically, for instance, on a blackboard or through the use of post-its. And we should consider that before this digitalization, this was a very useful knowledge management practice, because in practice we realize the validity of our ideas only when we put them in black and white with a pen on a post-it, on a paper, and when we write it with a pen, or better in many cases with a pencil, and when we reread them. And we should consider that unwritten reasoning tend to overestimate or underestimate our ideas. But it is only the comparison with others, on the other hand, that give me true evaluation, that can contaminate them, and very often that can improve my initial idea, my initial individual idea. Let's shift to the pre-digitalization cons that are affecting technology transfer activities. In particular, we have the possibility of selecting a wrong partner and starting a collaboration in a project only on the basis of a good impression that can be given for dissemination skills or for good research papers published by this person. But these effects cannot reflect into expertise, into experience, and also in past projects on that subject. As for the post-digitalization pros, we have the opportunity of solving in particular problems related to projects by considering that a group of people, a community, is always more creative and more innovative than the most creative of its members. So we can use tools like the crowdsourcing to solve organizational or personal problems. But we can also apply for funding my innovation project through innovative financial instruments, such as the crowdfunding and the use of crowdfunding platforms that are very spread in recent years. Or the possibility to fully track with a technology like the blockchain. We can track all the research records and all the past projects of a person or of a research group or of an institution, with the possibility also to read feedback validated through the nodes, the specific roles of the single nodes of the community. So we can have the ability to read also this feedback. So, as with the reviews of a restaurant or an hotel on TripAdvisor, we can thank a technology such as the blockchain, and with the use of this technology in the future, I will make all the information traceable, immutable, and based on the logic of consent. So if one says something that is not true to discredit me, the other members of the community cannot give consent and can refute this situation, can refute this aspect. And in my opinion, the quantitative aspect, the numbers of papers published, the citations, and the index that we can find in a platform like Scopus are very important for academics. But in the future, we will have also distributed versions of academic databases that can give us the possibility to integrate also qualitative aspects, and also the possibility of validation of these aspects by academic communities, by colleagues, by people with whom we have started a previous and a past collaboration on a determined topic. So we will be able to integrate additional qualitative information, for instance, to the low number of publications that have been published by a premier who worked as a full professor in the past. And the same for other past first ministers and more in general policymakers. So in these activities with the use of distributed academic databases, we will have the possibility to integrate qualitative aspects to quantitative index. And we can do the same for a scientist, for instance, Albert Einstein, or for another scientist, Stephen Hawking, in order to compare in quantitative but also in qualitative ways to people tracking in a complete way.
Roberto,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you, because it would be nice to have a few minutes for questions, if you don't mind.
Okay, I'm finishing my presentation.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Sorry to interrupt, sorry.
Thank you. Okay. So we can use also a more complete way for tracking these qualitative aspects in this way. And I will finish my presentation concluding with the comparison of pre and post digitalization in the context of social and ethical missions. And in particular, before digitalization, there was the same possibility to consider the university and more in general the culture as a social ladder that could be able of improving people's lives. And however, sometimes this ladder cannot be used by everyone equally. And however, the digitalization and in particular the use of agile methods and technologies can provide the opportunity to make not only new research contacts, but also good friends with whom to share days, to share projects, also in an even more enjoyable way, I can say. And the same problems, but more opportunities if this ladder can become a more agile lift. And however, too often the social lift cannot be unlocked and needs ordinary and extraordinary maintenance to fill the gaps that exist between the people who are not lucky enough to start from the same conditions and help to solve problems of this kind. Therefore, to conclude my presentation, we have seen that there are pros and cons, opportunities and threats that characterize the pre and post-digitalization phases. But we have the luck and ability to understand these because we are experiencing in person the digital transition. In particular, we remember what it was before, we see what it is, and we begin to imagine what it will be. Therefore, we can tell the before and the after. The problem, in my perspective, will be when the people will no longer know what the organization was, and more generally, what the world was before the digitalization. And we have an obligation, in my opinion, to prevent this from happening in order to avoid the need for a future analogic revolution, a second analogic revolution, to return to putting human as the center, as the integral and central part of all the processes, not only business processes, the central part of the organization. And therefore, what about the future? I'm concluding with a question. What about the future? In my opinion, to answer to this question, we should try to let the humans surf the digital wave and not the company or the machine to surf this digital wave. And we should move from the technology we know to the technology we deserve. This is an obligation for us that are living this digital transition. So I would like to thank a lot again for your attention and also for the colleagues that involved me in the organization of this presentation, of this lesson.
Roberto, thank you very much on behalf of all of our team. Appreciate it for your excellent presentation. And maybe we could ask one or two questions if any of the participants would like to ask any questions. Definitely, your last, slide about key takeaway is, we should never stop learning. It's a key takeaway that we should take. I should take, myself first of all. But this is what I recommend. I like that very much, because that's how you can become better. But this is also the needs, that we have to be updated, and this is what we do as a scientists. But this is anything. I was watching, someone that was an actress and said, okay, we went to the school, but doesn't mean that we finished after finishing the acting. And it was a very successful actress, and she said we have to continue that. Any questions? Because I want to be on time with our logistics. Anyone? You are not sleeping, right? Are you there?
It's okay. We can take the questions even later on in the afternoon sessions.
At least Adrian is there. Okay, good. So let's have 5 minutes break, grab a coffee, and then we'll start. Roberto, yes? Sorry? Go ahead.
This is Mario Pancera from Autonomous University.
Please.
Just a comment, because anyway, if nobody is making question, I can make just like quick comment.
Thank you.
That it's very good. It's complementary to the presentation. It's been published, a book called Slow Computing by Rob Kitching and Alistair Fraser, and the book addresses the problem of growing of digital technology. So there is a call to slow down, and I think it's very interesting, and it touches a lot of the point that our speaker of today touched. So it's called Slow Computing: Why We Need Balanced Digital Lives. It's a small book published by Bristol University Press. I'm reading now, and I think it's very interesting, and it's it's complementing the topic that we discussed this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead. Someone would like to ask any question or comment? Because we can, if not, let's get back. It's in 10 minutes after 11. Is that okay? So let's start sharp, and that will be my session. Thank you very much. Grab a coffee, and I'll see you in 10 minutes after 11. Thank you.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I hope you are back. In my session, I will try to be practical because of the purpose of this session. And the goal is actually to discuss about creative thinking and business model canvas. Now, one thing is I would like to ask you and think about it is, how creative are you? When we ask these questions, people usually they're shy, or they say, okay, I'm not so creative. I believe strongly that all of us were creative, and depends. So people, they say, I'm not an artist, so I'm not creative. This is wrong. Okay, I totally disagree. Creativity is the ability to produce work that is useful and novel. Okay, intellectual abilities, all of you, especially the ESRs, you have that. Knowledge, you have it. Style of thinking, okay, choose to think in a novel ways. Personality, motivation, and the environment. This is actually what brings creativity. It's not only, for example, the artists, okay, that they're creative. Now, there are some tips to enhance your individual creativity. Allow yourself to be creative. You say, no, of course I'm not, you will never be there, okay? So you have to dream about this. Give your mind a fresh input every day, if possible, okay? Recognize the creative power of mistakes. As I said, mistakes are good, but not to do them again and again, okay? Because that's how we learn. If you stay idle, you never learn, okay? You have to do things, and when you do things, you make mistakes. Keep a journal handy to record your thoughts and ideas. Keep notes, okay? Keep it on your phone, whatever you can keep, some thoughts. Record your thoughts, okay, when it comes. Listen to other people. Other people, they will say, okay, I have a problem, for example. When they say I have a problem and there is not actually a health problem, that means, okay, you are in the good thing, because that means that you can think for a creative idea, and that means a business opportunity also, okay? Take some time off to relax and think about it. That's how you create creativity. And talk to a child, because why talk to a child? As we grow up, we're afraid of mistakes. Usually we say, if I ask these questions, they may think, okay, I'm stupid, okay, and so on. Questions, please ask questions. When I was in your age and being, usually I was not asking too many questions, and this is wrong. Please, that's why I would say interrupt me at any point and ask questions, okay? Child is not afraid of it doesn't have these things. That's why talk to a child, you can learn a lot. Now, how to generate ideas? People, they say, okay, where can I find ideas? Ideas are everywhere. It could be by reading a journal, an academic journal. It could be, by reading maybe a newspaper. You could find it maybe with people that you discuss and say, I have this problem, okay? Or entrepreneurs, or, regular people, or maybe a policy that comes out, from the government, from the European Union. For example, now in the European Union, they say a big thing about the Green Deal, okay? And this is fine. Since Europe say, we would like to put so much money on the Green Deal, that means that they do that for what? Because they want to have growth in Europe, okay? And that means they will throw money. So you have to be ready there. The ECRs, I give this advice, to align of what you are doing, and maybe that could be a business opportunity for you, so you can acquire that money, okay? Okay, another thing that how you can find and generate ideas by brainstorming. This is what you will do today after actually our lectures, when you have these 2 hours, mentoring with Professor Genovese and Dr. Adrian Solomon, and I'm always available also, okay? So I would say, as a first exercise, think about it, now, and maybe as I'm talking and you're listening to me, write 3 problems that come in your mind right now related to circular economy. From all the things that you read, from the circular economy things, that the readings that you had, maybe could be 3 major problems that actually could become a business idea. And then you have to say, does your problem emerge from economic change, social, technological change in rules and regulations? So this is something that is the unsolved problems there, and they're expecting for someone, to solve them, and this may be you. And that also, by doing, this and have your own business, what you do. You hire people, you create jobs, and then you pay taxes, and that we have economic growth, in our case, that we are in Europe, we say in Europe, okay? And then I would say, okay, out of these 3 ideas, select one of these 3 ideas and come up to a possible solution to that particular problem that you have. And this is what actually we will try to teach you. And then this is what you will do by Friday. You have your own business idea that you will present it in front of people. Now, another thing that I would like to be very clear, as I will tell you what are the 3 key takeaways that I want you to take out of my, session. One is this: you have to understand what is creativity and what is innovation. Creativity is actually thinking new things. Innovation is doing new things. Okay, so creativity could be like an inventor, okay, that has a great idea, but that idea never went out to the market. For my session, I will give you my definition of innovation for the business purposes, because this is what actually is this week about entrepreneurship and innovation, business models. I would say innovation is something from someone. If someone from the service, first of all, I would like to tell you, innovation is not just technology. I will discuss later on. This is very crucial. But innovation for me is from the time that someone gives you €1, then is innovation that pays you for the service or product. Before that is invention. Okay, so this is one key takeaway that I would like you to keep for my session. Now, again, innovation, first of all, is not limited to technology. We have to be very clear. It can be a service, process, positioning, paradigm, and more. Okay, so do not confuse that innovation is equal technology. This is wrong. Okay, and also innovation is like the circular economy. It's not linear. Okay, and this is the similarity, with the circular economy. And usually myself, I say, linear economy, if we go now to my session, linear economy flows like a river, and circular economy is like a lake. So to make it simple for people to understand, actually, when we talk about linear economy, river, and when we talk about circular economy, is like a lake. So For this one, remember that actually innovation is not limited to technology. That's why it can be different dimensions of innovation: product, changes in the things, products or services; processes, changes in the ways in which they are created and delivered; position, changes in the context in which the product services are introduced; and paradigm, it changes the underlying mental and business model. Okay. For example, product, we can say the big thing, you know, for example, the containers, when actually someone found that we should have containers, that will actually, I could say this is incremental innovation. It's not a disruptive innovation. If we say, for example, when we used to travel, you know, and taking our luggage to travel, Samsonite luggage was existing all the time. Someone thought, who was that? Samsonite, to put wheels on the luggage. And that was also an innovation, incremental innovation. Okay, so it's not a big thing. Someone thought, okay, wheels exist, luggages exist, and someone said, okay, I will put it in all the wheels in the luggage. So that's what is innovation. Okay, and then of course they made money out of it. So this is something that I would say my first key takeaway: innovation is equal invention plus commercialization. Okay, so have this in mind, because this is what we will expect you to do at the end by Friday. Okay, company now. What is a company? Okay, the first actually company was created by Dutch people in 1600. Okay, they were very traveling and they had the first idea, and after, of course, 300 years, in 1908, we had the first, you know, Harvard MBA that actually was discussing this. Okay, so what is a company? A business organization which sells a product or service in exchange for some revenue plus profit. Okay, this is just to give some definitions to be able to talk to the same language. Okay, now let me move to this. Imagine yourselves, you know, the 3 or 4 of you, you know, as a founders of an idea, and I'm asking you guys, okay, what are your dreams? For the ECRs, they will say, my first dream is to get my PhD. I would say, okay, this is great. Of course, it should be a dream, but it should not be the dream. Okay, because you have to see what you will do with that. For example, this PhD, when you graduate, can you use it as a passport for your next big dream that you have? And as we say, when you have to think anyway, think big. Okay, and this is what we're expecting from all of you, because as Professor Genovese said, we are thinking all of you, and we'll be very proud to be the 15 of you, okay, the next leaders of Europe about circular economy in different areas, in the areas of academia, the areas of the industry, and maybe even some of you will go to work maybe for the government, okay, as a policy officer. Okay, so you have to say what are your dreams, and I would like to have this exchange. I don't want to talk to you. I mean, what if you have anyone has any dreams and want to share with us, please interrupt me, okay? So at least I will know that you are there. Now, for these guys, they said, we want to sell our water quality equipment to 10,000 Europeans in 2018, and I could say that they managed this because this is a real case, okay? So another thing, you remember I've said, okay, from where can we find, this is a dream. We want, for example, a world, you may say, without rubbish. Okay, fine. How can we do that? What is the business model in order to accomplish that? Okay. Someone else will say, we want to change the world. Someone will say, I want to become rich. And this is actually the achievable, measurable things that you know, some of these faces here and the faces here. The business idea. First of all, someone will say, okay, if you have a business idea, what do you offer? Usually they say in the startup world, what is your value proposition? What do you offer to the customer? Okay. That actually, if you offer me, I will give you €1, I will pay for your product, I will pay for your service in order to be innovation. So this is something that you should have in mind in order, when you have a business idea, it has to be very clear, what are you offering to the customer, okay? Now, Business models, how you will satisfy your customers. This is something that you should remember also in the business model. And some questions when you come up to this, get together brainstorm session in the afternoon is how you will recover, the investments, how you will earn money, who is benefit for this, who is paying for your service, product, process, or paradigm shift that you may have, and who recommends your product or service. Okay. Now, a good thing before, since we'll talk about business model canvas, it will be nice to say what is a business model. Okay, it is a summary of how a business will satisfy its customers. Okay, so because there are many definitions, I try to keep some definitions so we can be able to communicate and be very clear, of what we're talking, or how it will become generated income and benefits. Okay, this happy face, when things are coming, and always say, okay, you can make money, but okay, you can give back to the society. Okay, now, this is actually the business model canvas that we will go in more details. It has 9 blocks. I will say more details later on for each block. Okay, value proposition, customer relationships are the customer segments are very important. I will tell you more details about this. For example, a business model for the example of Nespresso, you can see here the value proposition, the activities, but I will explain you because some of you may never had what is a business model canvas, maybe some others but I will go, from the beginning later on. Now, something that I would like to be also, we have to be realistic when we start up a business idea is that no plan survives first contact with customers. In the past, all the business schools in the last 45 years, they would say, okay, prepare a business plan, go out there, and the company will do it. This is wrong. 75% of the companies having a business plan, actually they fail. So because they were spending too much money, some people they thought, okay, instead of having of spending so much money, to do this business plan and then go out and see that we have this failure, 75% of the companies. What about before we start a company to think about and do a business model canvas that we can put all the ideas there, do many iterations of our business model until we identify, until we validate that the customer, for example, imagine I'm having a product and this is the product, and then I have to show to the customer and the customer say a smartphone, and then we ask the customer if they would buy. Not, our hypothesis maybe they will buy, but did we ask the customer? Did we validate our idea? Okay, so this is what the business model canvas will do. So some people, because I got this from my students asking me, okay, what is the difference between a startup and a large company? And this is something that I think it will be easy for you, hopefully, to understand. A startup, most of the time, core of the time, they are searching for the right business model before it becomes a company. So a startup, in my definition, is not a company until it finds the right business model. And I will explain you what is the right business model, and then actually it goes out and becomes a company. But large companies, what they do most of the time, they execute. That's why you see startups, because they are searching for new opportunity, as we call it in the marketing, to identify the niche market. This is actually what they're doing. That's why they find, some weakness and they enter with new ideas. I said this in my opening, and this is the second key takeaway that I would like you to take with you. For those of you that you are thinking to do your own company, your own startup, in your startups, you are not bringing your friends or your dog, What do I mean? I mean that in the startup, the founders should be complementary to each other in order to accomplish the goal that you have for the startup. Okay. For example, if you need a designer, as I said, or if you need, someone to understand human behavior, I would say bring in your team, a psychologist. Okay, not another software engineer or someone with a degree on business administration with specialization in marketing, for example. Okay, this is what I would like to have in the team. Why psychologists? Because they understand better the human behavior, okay, and they can help you, assist you to understand that before you make the product, okay. Now, okay, let's take a breath and think, of this slide very carefully and slowly. What is a startup? You have to remember that a startup is a temporary organization, okay, designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. Okay, so it's a temporary organization, okay, that actually does this iteration that I say, okay, using the business model canvas that will come up soon. Okay, so this is the guy, ReTraCE. This is the book that I will recommend for those of you that you like, to go to lean startup methodology. A startup is a human institution designed to deliver a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. Okay. This is something that actually doing a new business and without having any experience in the past, of business, there is extreme uncertainty. Okay, for many issues that, of course, I will say a few things today, but we cannot cover everything. Now, here I would like to illustrate with you the difference between business and startup. You can see, for example, that the business is the cargo ship, large, slow, and efficient, and you can see a startup, a research ship that is small, agile, and robust. Okay, that's what I would try if someone, to say what is, I explained you earlier what is the difference between business and startup, and this is actually a photo that I think you could remember better. Now, definition of a business model, we said that let's go to the business model canvas. And this is the core on creativity was the first part, and the second core of this session is about business model canvas. Why we need a business model canvas? To help you map, discuss among your, brainstorm among your co-founders in your team, for example, design and invent new business model. Okay, it's a helpful tool to plan, build, develop, test, review, and fine-tune your business model. And very soon, you will know how to do it. It's very easy, okay? Easy to understand, but, doing it after that, it needs lots of iterations. So it has these 9 blocks, as you can see: value proposition, customer segments, channels, customer relationships, what are the key activities of your business idea, what key resources you need, for this idea, what are the key partners, what is the cost structures, how much money you will need in order to do, and what will be the revenue, from where are you going to make money. Okay, so the business model canvas actually has these 9 blocks, and by today afternoon you will have your own, first version number 1 business model canvas, I'm sure you know. So this is how a business model canvas, and usually what we do, we take the 3 M's, we write something and we say, okay, this is our value proposition. Okay, then we have another, we write something on the 3M, our notes, and this is our customer segments and so on. Okay, that's how it goes. Okay, customer segments, customer relationships. What are the channels that you need in order your service or product to go out, depending on what is your business idea, of course. Okay, what are the key activities? We'll give you more, I will explain what are the key partners, what is the structure, and from where are you going to make money? By subscription, by having, something else, from where are you going to make money? Okay, now, let's start now of this business model canvas. Why we need it? Very more simple definition to organize our thinking. And usually we say we don't have this opportunity, but if you were here, in Thessaloniki, we would say go out there. You have an idea. Go to the potential customers, talk to them, get their feedback, come back, revise the business model canvas, go again, test it with them, validate it with them, come back, and then actually this is how it would go. Now we will do it virtually on this, okay? Now let's start with the block number 1 and the most important thing that we have to answer, the value proposition. And the question is, what are you building, what is this business idea that you have, and for who. Who will be, I would say, your customer. Okay. So value proposition, okay, you are not doing, it's not about your idea and product. Maybe you have a brilliant idea, but if, for example, there is no customers out there to buy it, to pay you €1, as I said, innovation, then that means actually that idea is great, but maybe it's a great idea to have a patent. But if you have a patent, and there were many people, great inventors, that they never actually, their product, they never went to commercialize. Okay, and we have many cases. I don't have the time now to. So we have to say, for example, here, who are your customers? And it's about satisfying a need. Usually we say here, what type of pain actually are you going to resolve with this business idea? So you give them, in a way, with your business idea, a pain reliever. Okay. So this is the first and most difficult thing. Once you have this, I think you can work the others. But it has to be very clear to you. And of course, in a simple way, to answer, what are you building? What is your business idea? What are you building? And who actually will be your customers? Any questions so far? Silence. So you are there. Okay, you enjoy your coffee. That's good. Okay, so this is the value proposition. What product or service are you building, for who, and what does it solve? I leave that for a few seconds in order to comprehend this, because I said this is the first block of the business model canvas is the most important thing. And so what is your value proposition? What is your product or service? So you have to think now for, doing, your PhD through your confirmation, do I offer something? Okay. And this could be potential customers after I finish my PhD, for example. Okay. Or maybe this is what I'm doing. I can have, something aligned that could be actually become a startup company. Okay. So this is another thing that you could think. Now, okay, this is, we call it the unique value proposition, is a clear message that describes the advantages of your offer, what makes you different and distinguishes you from the competition, because always there is a competition out there, okay? So you have to say to the potential customers or to the investors that they may like to invest in your business idea, to buy equity shares, okay? What actually you are doing different from the competition, okay? So I'll skip this. The second now block of the business model canvas is the customer segments. Okay. The question there is, who are they and why they should buy from you? Okay. In the marketing terms, we call them customer archetypes. Okay, who are they? Are they age 18, to 25? There are people, because you sell something very 50. Is it government? Is the industry? Is that your idea would be B2B, business to business, business to consumer? So, and you have to see, what area you will start this. You will start in your own country and then sell, all over the world. So you have to understand all these issues, and you have to be very clear, of what are you planning to do. Okay, so let me see. Okay, now let me move a little bit more faster. So who are they? We will skip now. We go now to number 3, channels. What are the channels that I'm going to use in order to, either if it's a service or a product that I will use to get out, it will be physical channels, it will be, web mobile channels. How does the product get from our company to the customer? So that's another thing that you should answer. Okay. If it's the channels, it will be virtual, physical, and so on. Okay. And this is what actually you have to do. Block number 4 on the business model canvas, the customer relationships. Okay, how am I going to get the customers? How am I going to keep the customers? and how I will grow the customers. Okay. First of all, the first thing was, okay, how am I getting the customers? That's a very tough thing, okay, to get them. But imagine someone gets into the website, they see the website, fine, but then you don't give them anything, to stay in the website. Why you should, you need another strategy of how to keep them, and then how to grow your community, okay? So this is another thing that you have to think very clearly, and you have to put it in your business model canvas with the 3M that actually will be discussed, okay? Okay, customer archetypes, very briefly. What is their role? Who are they? How do they buy? What matters? You have to understand, the archetype of your potential customers. Block number 5, revenue model. How your startup idea will make money from those customers, okay? And you have to say, what value do you offer your business idea that the customer will pay for that, okay? So you have to understand this. You must have a strategy, pricing strategy, and all these things that is under this block number 5. Okay. Key resources. Okay, what are the most important assets required to make your business work? For example, if it's technology driven, then you may say, I need on the cloud to have this. I need a PC. I need something else. If it's a product, then you may need a manufacturing to produce this product. Okay, so you have to think, what are the key resources? Why we need this? Because you have to actually to put what will be the money to use it. The number 7 now, key partners and suppliers. Who are the key partners and suppliers needed to make the business model work? Okay, so you have to identify who will be your key partners in order to make it happen, your business idea. You have to think who will be actually your strategic partners, I would say, in order to make it happen. Then you have to say what actually are the key activities of your business idea. What are the most important things the company must do to make the business model work? For example, we're solving a problem, we're doing a better process, or we offer a better service, we're offering a new way of entertaining someone, like a game at home. So you have to see what will be the key activities of your business. And number 9 is the cost structure. What are the costs to operate the business? For example, how much money you need per month, per week. You have to be very detailed in order to make it, this, business idea, because at some point you will run out of money. Imagine that you need, 2,000 per month. That means you need 24,000 per year, and say that you invested on your own. We call it bootstrap from your pocket, 10,000, but you're missing 14,000. That means you have to find an investor in order to invest in your idea, in order to stay alive in 1 year. And usually they say most of the startups, they fail not because of anything else. The idea maybe was great, but they run out of money also. That's another thing, okay? So there is one book, because I want to be on time and maybe we can ask questions. There is one book that I will recommend you. They call it Product That Lasts, Product Design for Circular Business Models, that you can find more ideas of how you can have sustainable business model on this. So I'll stop here in order to ask questions, if we have any questions. Please, let's break the ice. Any questions, any suggestions, any comments? Nothing? You understood everything? Yes, please, Kevin, go ahead. Break the ice.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I think a lot of people think innovation always has to come from a product or a service, but it can be anything that's part of the business model. For example, if it's the finance that's unique, you can already innovate there and offer more value by just being cheaper, for example. So a lot of people, they always think about innovation. I have to do something that no one has done before, but the majority of innovations are just around existing products and services. Exactly. So also putting something existing to a new market, for example.
Example with the Samsung Night, okay? Okay, sometimes we think, okay, I don't have this idea, and you get crazy because I have to find the idea disruptive. No, it also there is disruptive innovation, but also it's like innovations, like, you know, simple innovations, like Kevin actually said. Yes, Kevin, that's a good point. Anything else that you want to add?
No.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Is there any method to evaluate the performance? Yes, there are, and if you want to use your speaker, and please ask the question. Unmute if you like. If not, we will discuss in the break. Yes, okay. This is something that I have on the other slides, but because of the time, you know, about design, things like that. This book that I recommend you, you know, this book, you know, this is a great book that actually answer all these questions. And maybe after offline, I can discuss with you, because I'm concerned with the time. And maybe I think we were on time. And what about now? Is the longest break, and if possible to be back at 12 sharp in order to go to the next speaker that we have today. A very exciting, actually, and nice, because I have seen the slides, that's why I know. Excellent, you know, presentation, you know, from the next speaker that actually will show you a real example of what actually I gave you an idea what has to be in the business model canvas. So let's have this break. Let's be back sharp 12 Central Eastern Time. Any other questions before we go? Nope. Okay, thank you very much. See you at 12 sharp Central Eastern Time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Ora si registrerà
Presenter.
la conferenza.
Just before we proceed to the next speaker, I just wanted to get back to some of the questions that were posted on the chat, especially since we did not have proper time to address them before in the previous session, actually. So the two comments related to innovation outside of the market, like the actual social impact or community impact, as well as to social innovation, are definitely, yes, that's really, really a good point. And that is a secondary, let's say, or should be primary impact of nowadays businesses, especially for not only for social innovation type of startups or startups that want to have impactful innovations, but generally for all kind of startups that want to succeed. And you will see this, and especially via some of the sessions related to impact investment, you will understand why this is important and why more and more investors, both private and public, are looking at startups that have an impact. So thank you very much. They're very, very good comments. Now, the question actually from Shusheng, considering the business model, is there any method to evaluate the performance of such methods? Well, yes, there are many ways to do this. It really depends what you understand from performance, in the sense that if you want to assess the, let's say, productivity or efficiency or effectiveness of a business model, there is a wide variety of toolkits out there. Including a business model innovation toolkits that can help you measure all these things. And even the University of Sheffield has some units, let's say, that produce such toolkits, and I'm happy to put you in contact and in touch with them. So definitely there is such a way. Of course, if you want to measure the sustainability or circularity, you can always adopt a life cycle analysis approach in order to properly assess the impact of the business model, but you're already familiar with this process. Hope this clarifies. And the last question, basically, how do you think circularity changes the design process? Well, this is a very good point, and we will see it in some of the presentations, actually, both like theoretical presentations and showcases on Thursday from actual entrepreneurs. So the best way is not to spoil the fun and to stay tuned for this in order to see the answers from the actual market experts. Okay, I guess this clarifies more or less, let's say, the questions that were posted on the chat. And now I'd like to welcome Ms. Dea Fischer, that will actually deliver a presentation, a very, very interesting and applied presentation on operationalizing circular business model, a deep dive into organizational, legal, and financial aspects of circular economy from her experience from Circle Economy, where they enable cities and businesses in the practical and scalable implementation of the circular economy. So a very, very applied presentation. Thank you very much, Ms. Fischer, for joining us and for your time. Just to check before you start, if everything is fine, if you can hear us well, we can see your presentation. So I'll just stop now, pause. We have, let's say, enough time. We can just leave a few minutes towards the end, if possible, of your session for questions, and we'll try to collect all of the questions, if possible, to be written on the chat, so that by the end of the session, we will just ask them. So thank you very much. Let's check it. Checking if Ms. Fischer, you can.
Maybe
we cannot hear you. Okay.
Now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe a bit louder. Yeah. Okay.
Should I speak louder, or is it okay like this?
It's okay like this. Now it's fine.
Okay. Okay. Great. So in a bit, I will share my screen again, because I think now you see my laptop screen. But I just have all these abbreviated names here, so I assume this is all the people in the room. And I'm just wondering, can I ask? Can everyone ask questions in the meantime, or only in a chat? How is it organized?
Well, for operational reasons, maybe it would be better to have them at the end, just to better approximate the time and not to exceed. But it's really up to you. If you prefer to have questions during your presentation, it's perfectly fine.
Okay. Well, I'm presenting about 3 cases. So if there's questions about the case, I will take a short time to answer questions then. And also, I would like to have some discussion time in the end, because I think it's interesting to see whether what I'm presenting, whether it actually resonates with what you're all researching, because there are some more multidisciplinary topics, some different topics I'm touching on. So I want to try to have at least 15 minutes of a debate in the end. So I just hope I'm not the only one who'll be talking, because although I have an interesting story, I'd like for us to have some interaction.
Excellent. This is very, very good, and it's going to be much better to have the proper interaction. So thank you very much.
Okay, so can you see my presentation? No, wait.
Yeah, we see it. Everything is good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were seeing it. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, it's full screen.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I have 1 hour with you guys, and I'm going to speak about organizational, legal, and financial aspects of circular business. My name is Aglaya Fischer. I am a project manager at Circle Economy. I work in the finance team there, and also I'm a PhD candidate at Wageningen University. I'm in my final year, so hopefully I'll be defending quite soon. And I am using the materials from my project management at Circle Economy quite often for my research topics. So what I will present today is more business examples, but obviously there are also research angles to that. We can discuss it later on. This presentation is not from a very scientific perspective, so I will present today more the business perspective and the things that we run into in those tangible projects. So just a little bit about Circle Economy. We're a cooperative based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and our mission is to accelerate the practical and scalable implementation of the circular economy. We have quite some programs to do that now. We publish once a year the Circularity Gap Report to put a number on the percentage on the circularity that we have in the world, and we need to improve also to reach the Paris climate goals. And then we work with quite some businesses, but also with cities and regions and with nations to do the scans for their circularity percentage. The agenda for my presentation today is that I will give a really brief setting the stage intro for circular economy and the business rationale. You'll be aware of this, but just to set the stage for the 3 cases I will discuss afterwards. One is the Fairphone as a service case, then the facade as a service case, and valorizing residual resources. And in these cases, I will discuss how we went into the case, what were the interesting findings, and also these cases. This is the chronological order. So in some cases, we stumble upon specific topics that need further research, or the topic that is relevant in another case as well, but then we are able to move into more detail. So the knowledge is building up in these 3 cases, so to say. Then I want to briefly touch on external costs and benefits, and then I want to go into the discussion to provide some conclusions from my story. But more importantly, I want to see whether you are also running into some of the issues that I will be discussing, and we can have a conversation about that. And I'm curious to see and to hear about your research then as well, a little bit, if possible. Yeah, just to set the stage, this is obviously the butterfly chart from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, but then flat. Just to pinpoint that we are talking about those cascading activities, so about maintenance, reuse, refurbishing, recycling, and that for businesses, it is actually the point to also make money while doing it, because then we don't have the on-the-side sustainability programs, but the whole point of circular economy, how I understand it and how I speak about it with the businesses I'm involved with, is that it should be about improving their core business by having some of these cascades, sometimes combination, sometimes in collaboration with other companies, but it should be about their product or service that they deliver in the core business. And that's the topic where we will be talking about. Now we have developed the value hill to show a bit about this circular economy business rationale. So in linear economy, you see that on the left side on the hill, value is added in a supply chain, and then the more value you add, the higher you get on the hill. So the more value is embedded in the product. And then the user often buys a product, and then value is destroyed, is being thrown away, maybe recycled at the end. So on the right side, we are displaying, again, the cascading activities on the right hand. And by this, you can move back to a higher place on the value hill. So essentially, what we do in circular economy and how we also talk with businesses about what they can do and what makes sense from a business perspective. The higher you move on the hill, the more value is embedded in the activity that you do. So if you add value by recycling, that's cool. But if you can add value by creating a product that lasts way longer and you may be able to provide it as a service, then you can create way more value potentially. Also, we've made some categories of this different sides of the value hill, so to say. So we talk about circular design, all the activities that take place on the left side of the hill when a product is initially designed. Then on the use phase, you can optimize that as well by, for instance, product as a service. That is in a literature often called PSS models, lifetime extension, repair, maintenance. So about extending the user phase. And then on the right hand, value recovery. So all the activities that take place in the supply chain, again, by refurbishing, remanufacturing, and recycling. And then on the bottom, we have something called a network organization, but you can think of that as an encompassing activity because there needs to be supply chain integration, value management. You want to have tracing facilities, logistics, making sure you know the assets are tracked and traced. So all the support activities. Yeah, we call that network organization. So if we're now going to the specific example of a business, then this picture, I think, is well known. It's the business model canvas. And yeah, we distinguish here between the business model itself, so how to create, deliver, and maintain value, but also the revenue model, so costs and revenues, the description of the costs and revenues, and essentially these two parts, so the top part, the business model, the value proposition, and the cost and revenue model, those are very much connected towards each other. The one should be kind of the numerical Excel sheet copy of the other. But it's very important, as we see in the cases that we've done now with circular economy, to have an idea of what those costs and revenues are and what are some of the challenges, some of the advantages of the new circular business models, but also the risks involved. Because we are also talking to a lot of financiers and trying to create financeable business models. So that finance angle is in all the cases that I will be going into now also an important topic. This is kind of the glasses we put on when we do a case, is we look at financeability. Can we bring these cases and these business cases to the level that they're actually financeable, which is not always easy. So now I'll take you through 3 cases, and after each case I will pause very shortly to see if there's already some questions or remarks. Yeah, because I think it's good if you have any questions, you can raise them after each case. So the first case I want to discuss is Fairphone as a service. And this was a case study we did a couple of years ago. With Fairphone. Fairphone is a company based in Amsterdam with the goal of creating a durable and conflict-free phone. And for that, they first raised money. They created the first phone. Then the second, the picture you see here is actually the Fairphone 2. And now they actually developed the Fairphone 3. And their motto is to create a modular phone. And the goal that we had in this project was to create a financially viable Fairphone as a service business case. So this means they had some idea that they already had a phone. They did not have to develop a phone from scratch. The phone was there. The phone was modular. You can see it as it is here. And they just wanted to see whether they could put the phone in the market in a way that they would have full control over the assets, and that the phones would come back after use, and they could refurbish the phones, and they could provide a longer service around these phones than to just sell them. Because what happens if you sell a mobile phone is that it tends to end up in the drawer somewhere. I'm guilty myself of having about 2 or 3 phones in my drawers as we speak. So it's quite a clever idea to provide a Fairphone as a service. And also because if anything happens to the phone, then Fairphone knows the technology behind it. So especially for technological companies, the product as a service or the PSS model that are user-oriented or performance-oriented can work very well. Now, some specifics of this business case is that it's a modular design. And that means that we had to think about this revenue model also on the detailed level of the modules. So instead of thinking about how many phones you would have going around, we actually had to create a model in which we were looking into how many modules we had going around. And what we saw, because we did some in Excel, some cash flow prognosis of how this model would look, what it would look like in reality. So we made some calculations, and then you see you can actually get an advantage because you don't have to throw away the whole phone if something is wrong. So, for instance, we discussed whether after between 1.5 and 2 years, the battery would wear out. So we could take back all the batteries and provide the customers with new ones in order to make sure that the phone goes a longer time. Also, there's the topic of self-repair, because all these modules can be screwed in and out with quite easily with tiny screws, and you can just replace them yourself. So if for instance the camera module breaks down for whatever reason, you can order a new one for, I believe, about 30 euros, and there's very easy manual, and you can repair it yourself. Also, we have discussed the reverse logistics for these modules. So how are we going to make sure that we get the modules back? And then you also have to make some calculations, because in this case, we were talking with business customers. So there would be a B2B service to start with. And we would say, okay, but if there are some large companies that have Fairphones for their employees, maybe we want them to collect first a threshold of like 30 or 80 camera modules or battery modules before we start sending stuff back, because that's obviously also a costly exercise to have logistics going back and forth. So here you see already, as I'm talking, that a lot of the topics have to do with some operational aspects of creating this new business model. So you need to make sure you think about how a product is built up, what are the modules, is it a modular project, what do you want to do as a company, what can customers or users do themselves. And then behind that, there's a translation into an Excel model and a cost picture, cost revenue structure of how this is going to work out. And then there's the specific topic for Fairphone, is that they will also provide software updates for over 5 years. This is to make sure that the phone will keep running smooth also after a couple of years, whereas other phone brands tend to stop updating after 2 or 3 years, and that makes the phone slow and annoying, and then you are incentivized to buy a new one quicker. And for Fairphone, it was also important to source conflict-free materials and have a worker welfare fund in China where the phones are actually made. So this is a social perspective, which is also a very important part of Fairphone's goal. Typically, not always involved in circular economy or circular business models, because it tends to be more about the resources. But it's, I think, really cool that Fairphone has thought about this as well. So it's both environmental and a socially just business case. So there was an intended launching customer, because we created set up a sort of pilot project, and the launching customer was an institutional investor. Why is that important? In itself, it's not very important, but if you're looking into financeability of such a business model, then the client, and if you have a strong client, that makes it all a bit easier. So in that sense, this institutional investor enabled at least more easily funding in that sense. And then if you would extrapolate the business model on a larger scale, then you can assume that there will be different kinds of customers. So some will be more trustworthy, and some will be maybe startups, and they have a bit of a risk to collapse. So in that sense, you want to create a portfolio of clients that if one stops with having the phones as a service, then another will continue. About how we did these cases is in a community of practice formats, and that means a pre-competitive environment in which we worked around a specific case, but with many different stakeholders, mainly from legal and financial backgrounds, and then we would ask specific expertise if we needed it. So this format works really well to co-create a business or to iterate a business case further, because you have all the expertise on board and also the investors or potential investors and the financiers, the bankers, so they can immediately pinpoint any risks in the business model. And we did it by a workshops and deep dive format. So we would have bigger workshops with the whole consortium, with the whole community. And then we would have smaller deep dives to focus on specific topics. So for instance, on the modularity and how the balance sheet would look like. We would have some different deep dives on the contract. And then also on this contract, what is an important takeaway from this case is that we created a circular service contract template together with law firm Allen & Overy. And in this contract template, we were able to provide something that other businesses that want to do a product as a service can use this to structure their business case in the contract, because the contract now becomes leading, because you go from a one-off sale of a phone to a contractual agreement, a long-term agreement, which is taking the form of a contract. Some findings I want to highlight from this case is that modularity is key. And part of that is that the value chain, there needs to be more collaboration, because if you want to have these modules being updated and refurbished and going back into the chain, you have to collaborate more and you have to coordinate that. Also, you will do a more granular asset management. So instead of managing phones, you will manage the phones times 7 modules. So it's way more detailed, and you want to have some systems for track and trace. Another important finding is that the power of the contract is essential. So this specific product as a service revenue model means that you go from selling an asset to generating cash flows with an asset arranged in a contract. So this sounds a bit technical, but this is how a financier perceives this business model. So it's very important that the contract is sound, that it's clear in a contract what is the responsibility of the user, what's the responsibility of the service provider. So in this case, it was Fairphone. And this contract has to be stable enough for financiers to base their financing on. And finally, we run into the topic called balance sheet extension. So this is an accounting term. The balance sheet provides insight of the assets of the company. And when you do not sell assets, but you keep them yourself, so the ownership stays with Fairphone, then the balance sheet grows. So there's a balance sheet extension. And at this point, this does not fit into current financial KPIs, key performance indicators. So then I'm talking about, for instance, solvency, which is at this point a problem. And I will talk a bit more about this last point also in the next case. First, I want to ask, are there any questions so far? And maybe someone can help me to read the chat, or should I check in the meantime?
Thank you very much. This was indeed very, very informative, and we already have quite a large material for discussion, as you stated in the beginning. Yes. So if we check the chat, I would like to actually start with from the top, of course, from the questions that were placed from Mario Pansera. There's actually a comment like the word reduce is totally neglected, totally disappear. In what context? Just if possible, Mario, to elaborate a bit on this.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. To reduce? What was the question?
No, I would like to ask Mario Pansera to ask the question, but with a bit of a context, if possible.
Hi. No, I was like I was referring to the slide in which you described the cycle, the closing the loops.
Yeah, you mean the setting the stage, and that you didn't see a reduce in there.
Yes, exactly. Because the first, the discourse about circular economy a few years ago, like all the notion of industrial ecology, was also based on the dimension of reduction of input. Because if you remove this reduction dimension, the only thing that is left is just waste management. So my question is why you are not analyzing also business model that are aiming at reduction in their strategy? Because otherwise we're just talking about classical waste management.
Okay, yeah, now you're referring to the starting point, and indeed reduce was not very specifically mentioned there. There are different frameworks, and indeed to reduce, I know what you mean. So in that sense, definitely it should be involved. I think it's also logical for companies to look at what they can reduce, even just from a cost perspective. Companies are often already looking at what they can reduce because using more materials is just also more costly. If I would answer your question for instance, the Fairphone case, but also many other cases, for some of the more durable products that you want to make in order to last for many use cycles, so that's the service model where you say, okay, the incentive is at a production company to make something which is durable, which is modular, which is made in a way that they can keep repairing and maintaining and refurbishing. And you also provide the company with that incentive through the use model. So they will have the benefits themselves also if the product lasts longer because they can service it instead of 2 or 3 years, maybe 5 or 6 years, just giving an example. Then you do see that for creating these products, sometimes a bit more material is needed on the outset. So let's say, for instance, we did this case with circular roads, highway road construction, and you would see that if you want to create a durable road that goes along twice as long, you can use twice as long, then you need about 10 to 15% more materials in the outset. So in that sense, reduce, very important, but we want to look at it over a total cost of ownership or even a total cost of use perspective. And if you look on this horizon of the full use cycle or multiple use cycles, as you would prefer in the circular economy, then the reduce is, sometimes you use a bit more on the outset in order to use something way longer. So it's not a topic that is neglected, but you are correct that it wasn't mentioned specifically. I think maybe for the sake of time, we can do one more question at this point, and then I'd like to move onwards with the next case. Is there one more?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm just going to actually mention the next questions, and actually there are, if possible, maybe to ask 2 questions because they're kind of related. So the first question is, are the Fairphone 1, 2, and 3 compatible between each other in terms of sharing modules? This is the question.
Okay, this is, they are not compatible.
Okay.
So all these Fairphones have been created in order to last longer. So at this point, they're created to last maybe 5 or 6 years. Also, at a certain point, the technology is outdated, and that has to do also with the internal chip. It cannot run maybe the latest version of Android. So there is this romantic idea that you should be able, and we want to be able, to keep connecting modules for the next 20 years or even longer in such a Fairphone. But in reality, it is just not how it works. And also, if you would produce a phone that will be outdated in such a way, then in the end, you will lose customers. So you will not attain the goal of having a sustainable phone. So in that sense, Fairphone is focusing on take-back schemes. So at a certain point, there is a newer model available, just also to provide people with state-of-the-art technology in phones. But it is lifetime extension for every of these phones from 2 to 3 years to 5 to 6 or 7 years. But at a certain point, clients just want to make a switch to newer technology.
Excellent. So it's about the demand and the financial sustainability. Okay, thank you very much. And just another quick one that is somehow related to this, and then you can proceed and we go back to the other questions. how did the circular aspects of Fairphone differentiate from the leasing model from other existing phone leasing initiatives?
Yeah, it is a really good question, and also touches upon an important point, because the concept of lease is often used one-on-one in a PSS or product as a service. And although lease as a financing structure can be used, I find it tricky to take it as the one or the other to believe it's the same. It's not. Lease is an asset-based finance product, and this means that you have a security behind that lease contract, and that is the asset. And in this case, the asset is the phone. But if we would now compare it just quickly to a car lease, then there's a very clear second-hand market. So the lease company knows what to do. They know what the asset is worth at any point in time. So this is easily done, as we know. If you're talking about phone lease, this is not easily done. And also, if you do talk about private phone lease, you're talking about financial lease, which actually is on paper, it's a sale, but you just pay in installments for maybe 1 or 2 years. So you have a difference between financial lease and operational lease. In operational lease, the company keeps ownership. So you can use this lease structure for Fairphone as a service. For financial lease, which is normal in the phone industry, you are losing ownership. So the customer becomes owner. So it's not handy to do this in a circular economy if you want to have your assets back at the end for sustainability and circular cycling. You can use the concept of lease, but then you will run into the problem that the value in this business model is not just the asset. It's also the ability to update and keep updating this asset, and the ability to provide an ongoing service. So the contract is way more important actually than the assets, but you need the assets to provide the service. So it's more complex, and it's also more complex than lease, but you can use some aspect of lease for this.
Yes, excellent. Okay, thank you very much. I believe we can continue now, and then we'll retake some of the other questions in the next video. Super.
That's excellent. And so I will talk a bit more about product as a service because we were running into so many issues that we got another case that said, okay, we need help because we have this business model and we are facade builders. Actually, on the right hand, you see the structure of this business case. So there are 3 facade builders, and these 3 want to collaborate in a joint venture called the Facade Service Company. And with this Facade Service Company, they want to build facades and keep ownership of them and maintain them, and also refurbish them, do all the activities involved. And if for any reason the owners of the building want to dismount it, the facade can be taken away. It will be maintained very well, so it can maybe even be installed in another building again, or at least it can be demounted and then refurbished and with little effort be used somewhere else. And then in the end, it can be recycled on material level. But so this is very clearly, again, the wish to create a very durable facade, to provide the service of the use of the facade, and also with the included technology. And technology integration could be sun protection and some climate control. So also you could assume that the more technology you can integrate in the facade, the better this business model should work, because whenever technology is involved, then there is the more reason for companies and manufacturers to stay involved, because they just know the technology and they are able to keep it best maintained. So what was specific of the business case is that there was a collaboration of facade builders, and they started a joint venture. Indeed, they had the modular design, so also with aspects of upgradability. They would mount the facade to some hanging points on the building itself. So they thought about how to do this. And they were creating a pilot project of a residential tower in the ABIS quartier that's in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Again, we looked into contracts, again with the help of Ellen Overy, a legal firm. And I want to move straight to the findings, because what we found here is that in the built environment, if you want to do product as a service, then you run into something called accession. And this is a legal rule that an object, if you connect an object to a building, then it becomes legally part of the building. So this means that what you could arrange easily in the Fairphone case, namely that by creating the rightly formulated contract, you can, being Fairphone, keep ownership and provide the service around phones. In this case, that was way more difficult, because apparently if you would create such a contract, the facade would legally still become part of the building. And so also legally, then the building owner would own the facade, which is some specific in the built environment. And there have been different ways of circumventing it. What has been used so far is to use the right of superficies. And that means that there is a way to transfer the piece of ground legally where this facade is on to the service provider company. And then it is possible to establish a right of mortgage that has to do with the financing behind the business, because the financiers who finance such a business always want to make sure that there's a security behind it. So a financier will never finance a facade builder that says that they want to do this really cool facade as a service, while on paper they are not even the owner of the facade anymore. So this is why, from a finance perspective, it's really important to figure this out. Another option that we created in this project is to come up with a combination of a rental and a service agreement. So this is a different contractual construction. And this bypasses the accession issue altogether, because you essentially are constructing contracts around it. Now, I won't go into the complete legal details of this, but it's certainly an interesting construction and it could work very well. Only the risk models of financiers are at this point not able to make adequate calculations for this. And the reason is that we are always used to create the structures for the things that we are doing every day, 10 times, 100 times a day. So banks have created risk models that assume a right of mortgage as a security. As soon as that box is checked empty, then there is, from a risk perspective, a problem. So this is not necessarily a real problem, but it's a problem because we are just way used to do the things certain ways, and we haven't been able to change these ways of thinking yet. Again, we were running into the balance sheet growth, and again, this has to do with the interpretation of financial ratios. So again, when a financier sees a balance sheet with a lot of facades on it, then they will ask questions about liquidity, about solvency. It's seen as a threat by financiers, whereas if you would think about a future in which resources are scarce and volatile, and I believe we're already in this kind of a world that we have to think about these risks, then maybe it's not a bad thing if you own all these facades yourself. Maybe it's actually a resilient thing to do if you want to have also materials to build new facades in 10, 20, or 80 years. So this thinking about the balance sheet growth is also very typically something that we see is difficult from the current finance perspective, but in the future we would have to have some debates and discussions on this and to maybe reinterpret this. Finally, there is a lack of mature markets for building elements, and for this actually goes for a lot of circular business models. If you want to value them and be able to put a higher value on the circularity of it, then you get the question how you're going to potentially sell the residual resources or the secondary resources, the harvested resources, when you demount the facade again. So this market, the circular economy market of reusing elements and materials, is not very developed, and this is also a challenge at this point of time, but we can assume that this will develop in the near future, that these markets are going to be more apparent and there will be easier matching of supply and demand. Are there any questions at this point about the facade case?
Yeah, actually, thank you very much. This was very, very interesting. There was a question that started a thread of conversations actually on the chat. And we were informed that more on this question will be actually provided tomorrow. But perhaps your insight would also be valuable to better understand the situation. So the question is, let me try to simplify it as much as possible. The question started with how as a company, how to survive by capping profits, for example.
How to survive what?
How to survive by capping profits. Sorry, how to survive capping profits, basically. This was the question. So maybe Mari, if you want to elaborate a bit on this. Just to give again the background that you have.
Always me. I think we should open up a little bit the discussion. No, but basically, yeah. I was replying to Maria in the chat that she's saying that if you are a context in which the companies are pursuing profits, you cannot talk about reduction. And I disagree. I think that we should create an economy in which we have caps of profits, because I know you can have caps that will allow people to thrive and to live a decent life, but eventually this will not hamper the idea that we need some profits at the end of the day. But it depends how you set the limits of the profits, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So this was my.
Yeah. Okay. Very important question. I think very interesting discussion. Also, this essentially is a discussion on growth and whether we should pursue growth, and also economic growth, and what is in the economic numbers, then what do you measure and what you don't measure. So in that sense, I'd like to park this question a little bit because I think it ties very neatly into the final part about external costs and benefits. And then I want to talk a bit about impact and impact measurements. As a way to steer better on these numbers. So I will first continue now with the next case, unless there's another question. But this topic I will touch upon a bit later. No question about this case specifically, because then I will continue.
I believe we can continue, and whenever there's something, people will just post it and we'll take it at the end. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so the third case I want to discuss is not a product as a service case. So here we're moving into a different kind of a business case, and also it's not about being on top of that value hill, extending the user phase. Not at all. This is about adequately valorizing residual resources. So this is something which takes place in a lower value echelon, so to say. So we had this business case of a small startup company, Intelligent Food, it's called, and they aim to reduce food waste. And to do this, they created a platform for creating innovative food products from residual food resources. So this could be trimming edges, byproducts from productions of certain food types. And then they would come up with new concepts. And to do this, Intelligent Food created a cooperative. So the company structure is a cooperative with different memberships, and the members who would provide their residual food resources, they would get a balance on a current account. So there will be an internal current account structure, and the value of the in-kind resources the cooperative members would provide would be put on that current account. And then at the end of the year, when there would be products made from it and the products would be sold to consumers, then at the end, the profit would be distributed accordingly to how much value, so how much they have contributed in kind to that product, to the product sales. So the example we took is to make cookies from residual dough. So there was a big dough producer, Europastry, and they had some trimming edges, and they're already trying to reduce as much as possible the dough they need and the things they cannot use, because for them it's also an extra cost, everything they produce and cannot use. But yet there is some trimming edges which remain. And so until this point, they were selling these trimming edges to animal feed companies, and that would give a very, very low, they would give a very low amount of money for that. So the idea was now to create cookies for human consumption, also because this dough was from very good quality. So it's actually a bit of a waste to feed it to animals. The question we had is how can we put a value on this residual dough? So we assumed that it would be somewhere between the animal feed price and the virgin dough price. And if you're now, this was actually an accounting exercise also. So we did some calculations to see whether there would be a sweet spot for the price of this dough. But if you do such an exercise, you will get into a fight with the accountants, because the accountant's profession is about reflecting financial reality. And at this point, there is no agreement on what the reality of this is, because it's a new kind of business model. It's really cool, it's circular, but there is no existing market for this residual dough. So we could not put a market price on it, so to say. Some findings of this case is that the cooperative structure is an interesting organization structure for aligning incentives. So Intelligent Food was able to integrate their value chain, and then I mean vertical integration. So usually what we have seen in the past and still see is that cooperatives are being formed between, I don't know, like 100 dairy farmers or 100 potato farmers in order to make sure that they can get the right price for their product. But now this cooperative structure is used for another kind of integration to connect the material resource stream with the one who creates the recipe and with logistics. So it works differently, and it's quite clever in order to incentivize everyone to produce or to invest with in-kind value, so to say, and then share the profit at the end. Valuing the dough appeared to be quite difficult. So we provided different ways of doing it. So you can either use some kind of market value, but then you have to value on the lower end of the spectrum, so more towards the animal feed price, because that is how it is interpreted until you have proof or something better. So it's always very conservative valuing and accounting. So the other option can be to put it on the balance sheet as a contingent asset, which means that you don't take it into account at all in the start, but you wait until you have a result, and then you can calculate it backwards. This is not, you cannot put a contingent asset on the balance sheet. You can put it in the notes. This is also a technical aspect of accounting in circular economy. Why we want it in the balance sheet and not just in the notes is that what gets valued gets managed. And what we see now is that so many of these values of sustainable business models, of circular economy business models, so many of the value is not captured in the financial numbers at this point. And so it's impossible to steer on these numbers. So we say we might have to rethink some accounting standards. We need a discussion, and we need impact measurement and integrated reporting. Are there any questions on this case so far?
All right, thank you very much. There are no specific questions written here, but I have a question about the impact measurement. Do you use some sort of, let's say, internationally approved indicators for this, or do you develop like your own bespoke type of indicators for the impact measurement?
Well, for this case, we have not measured the impact. Actually, it is on our agenda to do an impact case in 2021. And we will collaborate with Impact Institute, which is an institute that is working on integrated profit and loss accounts and to report on impact also for financial reporting. There is quite some stuff going on with circular metrics. So there are different ways of measuring impact. Are you measuring impact in a broad sense? Are you measuring circular economy impact? So this is really a kind of a race between many different organizations and IDs at this stage. In my opinion, there is no accepted framework for this yet, and we definitely need it to make a link between what is circular and what is sustainable, to put it in numbers and translate it so it can be accounted for in some way.
Excellent. We have a very enthusiastic comment from Mari. And it's very good to see the enthusiasm and ambition for this. And yes, definitely this is really, really needed. Okay, we can move on, I guess.
Yes. So I want to touch very briefly on this topic because we're approaching the end of this conversation. So impact, it's all about impact, and if we are looking into what essentially we're doing with these circular business models, we're trying to internalize some of the external costs and benefits of companies. So here's a list of costs and list of circular benefits. I don't want to get into it, but I just want to stress that we have to think about linear risk. So what are the risks of these costs not being included at this point? And what happens if we are forced to respond to them at a certain stage? And we have to think about how to include the benefits in the price. And that's with measuring impact and measuring circularity can help. So we have to measure. This is also touching on this topic. As I just said, it's still kind of a blue ocean, a lot of stuff happening in competition also with each other for what will be the metric to take. Circular Economy has published a report with some oversight of what's out there right now, which you can have a look at. At this point, there is the development of the circular transition indicators of the World Business Council and KPMG, which seems an interesting metric. But as you see, it's not the only one. There's a lot happening. So I think we should all keep tuned in to what's happening on this topic. Well, to wrap it up, I discussed a bit, explained a bit about the cases and what we have been able to find, also how these cases and the actual product behind a case, so a phone or a facade or dough, how that relates to the value created and how that relates to financeability and some legal issues and accounting issues. It's important to realize that circular thinking is making stuff more interesting, but also a bit more complex. So we go from selling assets to providing services in contracts. That's a more long-term perspective to take with more responsibility also for businesses and their value chains. A lot of new value propositions, and they have to do, they take into account the long term. At this point, there is a lack of track record and a lack of contracts, so there's still quite some transition costs to make, and the pioneering companies are paying a lot of these costs, which is not always fair. So I think also governments should free up resources for experimenting, for learning, for co-creating. And the other companies that are lagging behind, they're waiting for the others to figure it all out. So the companies who are working on it already need some support, I believe. And we need to rethink some financial KPIs, solvency, liquidity, profitability. So that's also what we do a lot with Circular Economy on these projects, to talk with bankers, with accountants, to see how we can understand these circular business models and translate them into the right numbers, and then make sure we interpret the right numbers maybe in a different way, in a more of a long-term thinking perspective. And finally, what gets valued gets managed. So indeed, we need metrics, we need impact measurement and financial reporting. That was the story I wanted to share, and there's still a bit of room for some questions or comments. I'm also very curious if any of what I was talking about resonates with what you are running into in your project. So that's a question from me to you. So please also share if you see similarities.
Thank you very much. This was really very insightful and triggered a very good debate. Now, while you guys are writing on the chat if this resonates with what you know already or with what you do, and please feel free to write on the chat if you're, let's say, aligned with this. I'm just going to state one question that appeared now on the chat. So the question is, based on your experiences of circular business model innovation, what would be your top 3 tips for new entrepreneurs?
Oh, top 3 tip for new entrepreneurs. I would say, so I'm working with a very broad range of businesses. So sometimes I'm working with startups, sometimes with big companies that want to make a shift to circularity. So a specific tip for entrepreneurs, which are startups, so creating a new company, that is to create a very clear value proposition, and also get help with calculating what that means financially, and to make some scenarios of what happens when resource prices go up or down, or when you have 100 customers or 1,000. So what I see a lot in the early stage is that it's mainly an idea, and it's not always supported by a support structure of clarity of what is the value and how will you get some money back for it. And because in the end, a company has to be able to sustain itself also financially. So in that sense, I don't believe in sustainability without financial sustainability. So get your ID right, and then get the numbers right, and please get help with it, because there are many people like freelance financials who can help businesses to create this, and it's really needed.
Okay, thank you very much. In the meantime, I have received some private messages, mostly that it does resonate with people's work. So it's very good. Now there are 2 more questions. Actually, one is more of a statement. So I'm going to read the first one. I would argue that moving from a product to a service model is not always the best way. This is often used to create a vendor lock-in, and sometimes leads to less repair and reuse. This is one statement.
Yeah, I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating with all these specific business cases. So I agree that it's not always the best thing to do. It depends on the level of technology and service you can offer as a business. Not for all products it makes sense to do that. Also, at this point, the product as a service is often a bit more expensive than just to buy a product, which is not good, but that's also caused by the fact that it's new and difficult to finance. So the financing costs are higher. So at this point, it's sometimes just not interesting enough to do. Whether the services or the quality is less, like the last point of the question, I may hope not, but I mean, I believe that the companies who are creating these kinds of models are thinking about how they can create a win-win for everyone, and that's what they should do. So if there's one party who is not experiencing a win, then it's not a good model.
Thank you very much. This is very, very clear. And now we have actually a series of questions put together. Now, from the past projects, which cases stand out as the most promising case to turn products into services? This is the first part of the question. I'll just take it step by step.
Okay. Yeah, for me, all products with a technological component involved are good clients for product as a service. So I would say phones, laptops. So building facades, yes, as long as there's enough technology included to make it interesting to have that extended involvement of a manufacturing company. So I find it difficult to choose one, but I would say businesses with technology involved that the manufacturer slash service provider or combination knows more about than the customer, then it makes most sense, and then it can work really well.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the second question, like related to this, is besides the financial viability and contracting issue, I find it difficult to see the built environment as the most fitting sector to apply the product as a service model. How did the facade, let's say, as a service model come about?
Well, it came about by these three facade builders, and specifically one of them is really a front runner and connected to the other two in order to provide a new value proposition. So it was also to develop something new. And also to use the potential of circular economy and cascading in their business model. So in that sense, it can work and it can make sense. Also, they are piloting with it now. In the build environment, it can be a bit difficult because if there's not a lot of technology involved and something stays very long. So let's say the structure of the company, which remains 50 to 70 years maybe, or even longer, maybe it doesn't make so much sense to do that in a product as a service. So indeed, if the lifespan is really long, then it can be done, but it will be more difficult also from a finance perspective, because the tendency is to look more on a short term, also in terms of financial products. But for the built environment, for instance, there's MUs, Mitsubishi Elevators, so that's vertical movement as a service, and that is working really well. So it depends on what specifically you're talking about, also then in the built environment, I would say.
Oh, I think it was very, very clear. Thank you very much for this excellent and hands-on presentation. It was definitely very useful, and it did manage to stir, let's say, a lot of debate. For any further questions, of course, hopefully we can contact you at any point. And thank you very much again for your time on this.
Sure. Well, thanks a lot. And yeah, you can contact me if you have any further questions. Please also know where to find us at Circle Economy. If you have any cases that you think, wow, this is complex, maybe they know something about it, just reach out. And I wish you all good luck with all the research projects and also with this winter school.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Guys, 5-minute break, and then we will continue with the last session actually for today in 5 minutes. Just checking for the next speaker, Violetta. I'm not sure if you're connected because I don't see the name. I see just some account.
Adrian, can you hear me?
We can hear you very well. Just if possible to try sharing the slides to make sure that everything works well.
Yeah, just give me a minute because I'm responding to something. Give me a moment, I'll be with you. Let's see here. Okay?
Yeah, everything is good. Super, thanks. Let's just give it 2-3 more minutes just for the audience to have some time.
Yeah, because I heard that they just finished.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they need a break.
2 or 3 more minutes, just make it good. Okay.
No problem.
Ora si registrerà la conferenza. Ora si registrerà la conferenza.
Yes, thank you for recording. And what we will have now is going to be a hands-on presentation on financial planning for startups in order to better assist you with understanding the financial viability of the business idea that you will have to develop throughout this week. And we have here Miss Violetta Sfuri, an expert in this, coming from the University of Sheffield International Faculty, City College from Thessaloniki, from our center here. Violetta, I'll let you do further introductions, and just if possible towards the end of the session, maybe to leave like 5 minutes for any kind of questions. Again, guys, the rules are the same. Feel free to use the chat to type the questions, and good luck with this. This is actually quite a core part that you'll have to leverage in your pitch. So thank you very much, Violetta, for accepting to join us, and the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for the introduction. Just to tell you that I'm the academic director of the postgraduate programs in the Department of Business Administration and Economics. I teach, one of the subjects I teach is entrepreneurship. I'd like to share with you a few tips about the financial planning of startups, because as we already know, I mean, a startup is challenging enough as it is. Quoting Steve Blank here, it's a temporary organization designed to search, for a repeatable and scalable business model. So this has a lot of implications. You've already been exposed, from what I understand, to the lean startup, this whole idea about testing things. So basically implying that we shouldn't put all our money in developing an organization full-fledged, rather doing it step by step. So if anything, it's an affordable loss if things don't work out. Well, okay, if things prove to be good, then we just carry forward and enjoy, reap the benefits of what our success is going to be. So at that stage, everything is about guessing. So when we're developing our model, we think we get it right from the start, which actually may not be the case. We have to go iterate, go back and forth to see what we need to change until this is a workable model. And basically what this means, it's about serving our customers well, giving them what they want at the price that they're willing to pay, to have a competitive advantage vis-a-vis any competing solutions. Our value proposition clearly has to be attractive, but on the other hand, guess what? We still need to make money off of this. And that's the most challenging part, I would say. Overall, you know, entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs are very enthusiastic, and they really believe in their idea, and that's really good to have this enthusiasm. But on the other side, we have to kind of look at the numbers. So generally speaking about projects, you know, when we're thinking about putting money into a project, and clearly, as you may have been told, or if not, I'm telling you now, even when you're starting your own project and you go for funding, you know, you want to attract investors. One of the things that, you know, clearly, you know, attracting investors, yeah, you want them to put their money in, but still that requires that you chip in some of your own. In other words, the partners have to put in some of their own money. So it's the amount of capital that we need to invest to start our business. And it's good, I'm telling you from the start, that we try to do as much as we can with our own money to take it to a certain stage before we go for funding. But that's a whole separate topic in itself. I mean, we have to consider the alternatives of that investing. Why? Because if we put our 50,000 that our partners have in this business, you understand, we're taking this money away of doing possibly something else with that, and there's always that opportunity cost, okay, for your time and effort. But clearly, as I said in the beginning, young entrepreneurs don't even think about that because they're so wrapped up in their project and making it happen that they won't even consider the opportunity cost. Now, taking it to something that generally concerns the attractiveness of a venture, a new venture, to say it's attractive. And this is important for us, but it's important also when we go for funding. In other words, growth. I mean, we'd like to see that the venture has good growth prospects in the next 5-7 years, particularly when we involve investors and they put their money, because as you probably already know, investors don't want to stay in there forever. They invest their money in several projects. So they want, it's a marriage, but it's a marriage with a planned, so to speak, divorce. When they want to get out in 5-7 years, they want to make money. So we want this to be a promising, you know, venture in terms of its growth prospects. And part of that is that our revenue we're acquiring, we're bringing in new customers, but we also have possibly recurring revenue from our existing. Another thing is, you know, to feel certain about projecting our costs, and we have to sort of play with that cost structure very carefully. If we prove to be successful, which means we're profitable, some of those profits ought to be reinvested in the business, because remember, startups by default, startup is about growth. I would say aggressive growth, okay? A startup wants to grow aggressively. So to be able to be profitable, to be able to finance some of that growth, along with the additional capital, of course, that investors will put in at the different stages. But as I said, these are separate topics in themselves, and I was asked to talk to you a little bit about some more basic things about the financial plan. So yes, there are many challenges about you know, going into a new business, but particularly a new business has to keep in mind the two survival objectives of any firm. Okay, and more so even for a startup. The business has to be profitable and the business has to be liquid. Now you might think, okay, profitable and liquid, one goes hand in hand with the other. Yes, because if we are profitable, we ought to be liquid too, which means to have enough cash to meet our financial obligations, to pay our dues, our expenses, any loans if we have at a later stage, to be able to do that, but to also have extra cash available, because sometimes things don't turn out as we expect them. Or the bright side of things is we might have you know, some opportunity to be able to take advantage of it. So, you know, being liquid is a challenge of all times. It's a challenge for the young business, for the infant business, but it's also a challenge even once the business launches operations and is even turning profitable. So what I'm saying basically to you is a business can be profitable. In other words, my revenue minus my expenses, as we will see on the profit and loss statement, shows I'm profitable, but I may not be liquid. So these are things that, you know, we have to sort of try from the start. Clearly from the start, the business cannot be profitable or may not be profitable unless it has some, I don't know, phenomenal, exceptional growth from the start. But as we know, that doesn't happen to most businesses. It takes a while to turn profitable. So until then, I have to be able to cover my costs, which is crucial. Okay. So basically, what are the critical questions that we have to consider, you know, as a startup, right? Oops, we jumped ahead there a little bit. Now, the critical questions, I have to think about how much money is needed to put this venture together. And we could do the same thing, the same venture. We could start it, let's say, with 75,000, or maybe we could start it with 120,000. The point is how much cash we need to put out, okay? And that's where we have to really start taking a really good look at that. In other words, it's the money to set up the business, and then it's the money that I need to be able to support the company until it turns profitable, okay? And which kind of suggests that until I'm profitable and I'm incurring the so-called loss, how do I sustain my operations, okay? So that's one of the things that we have to be able to address. Other things that are very important concern eventually about our profit margin. In other words, what is that profit percentage? Because as we know, the competition changes. It may not turn out to be what we expected initially. And the profit margins have a lot to do with the return on our own investment, but also the return on the external equity, the investor's money, okay? Other things that we have to consider, of course, is how to fund this. In other words, how much money are we going to put into it? How much we've got to put into it? How much versus how much money is needed? And do I need to put all this money in cash, which is another thing. And finally, the other critical questions, of course, concern that does my model and my financial plan make sense? In other words, does that appear attractive to investors in order for them to put their money into the business? So these are the critical questions of, you know, of the startup that relate to the financial matters. Now, some of the things that, you know, startups are facing vis-a-vis existing businesses is, you know, we don't have like a history to be able to assess the risk. And as I already told you, entrepreneurs tend to put the pink glasses on and look at everything in regards to being attractive, you know, peaches and roses sort of thing. And that's where we kind of need to be a little more objective, and hopefully the background hypothesis testing and all of that has been able to allow us, if not to de-risk it, to lower the risk. Another thing clearly is from the start that we don't have this profit potential and this liquidity. And the other thing is we don't have financial credibility. As an existing business, we've proven what we can do. A startup hasn't proven anything yet, so we don't have financial credibility, which means we don't have access to borrowing because we haven't proven that we could be successful to survive and be profitable. Another potential challenge here has to do with misallocating the sources. In other words, the money. in the beginning. How am I going to spend the money at this pre-startup and startup phase could be very potentially risky by being in a position not to manage things carefully, to misallocate my funds. In other words, to spend unnecessarily or to spend upfront unnecessarily. And once I set things up, I'm locked in, and we have to be very careful with these types of costs. So that's exactly why, you know, going from our canvas, our business model canvas, to putting together projected financial reports, which are budgeted, right? They're budgets, they're plans. Yes, putting them together is one thing, and actually laying them out properly, but it's this constant erasing, deleting, going back and revisiting our model and looking at things and seeing whether they make good sense and making the necessary changes, because keeping in mind that we need to be profitable and liquid. So it's not what I'm going to show actually in the financial reports as such. It's what I'm doing in my model that's enabling me to be profitable and to be liquid. So there's a very close relationship there. Just putting together a simple table, because one of the key questions we said in the beginning have to do with my startup capital requirements. In other words, where am I going to need to be spending money? So we have startup expenses. I don't know whether it's what am I doing? Marketing expenses up front. I need to develop my product. I need to create my my website. I need to develop and test my app. These things are startup expenses. On the other hand, so we have to list them to see, you know, what each of these costs. On the other hand, we should put together our assets, which are the physical resources that the business is going to need. So is it equipment? Is it machinery? Is it office? Is it whatever it is that I need to have in place? And that kind of gives me an idea of this money that I need to dish out, and possibly not. Because if I come up with 100,000 cash requirements, let's say, capital requirements to be able to pay for all of these, my other thing that I need to consider at that stage is, do I really have to pay this money up front? Can I save any of this money? All right, which kind of brings us a little bit here to our balance sheet. And I'm sure you're familiar with the balance sheet. The balance sheet basically shows the resources that the business is going to be using, that I need, my assets, versus the other side that has to do with how I'm funding this. In other words, if my capital requirements, I need to spend 100,000 and I have 75, that means that 25 has to come from somewhere else. So is it going to be external equity? I need investors' money. That's what I'm talking to you about. So our balance sheet basically is this, okay? What exactly are these resources that I need to have, must have, okay? Some cash that I need to have apart from acquiring the other assets, the other resources, because we need to have that extra cash built in. Why? Because I need to be able to be paying for my expenses once I start at the pre-startup and at the launch stage, where I'm not going to be earning enough money. So that's something that we have to think about to help our liquidity. At that stage, when we're considering purchasing assets, should I pay them cash? Should I use trade credit if that's available, which gives me the, you know, the trade payables? Can I take any credit? Can I buy used equipment? Can I do things for free that I don't have to pay upfront money? These are things that we have to consider in order to bring the cash requirements down. But the balance sheet as such will show us what the resources, what are the ones that I need, and how I'm going to finance them, okay? There's less emphasis on the balance sheet, even in the financial plans. When the investors ask to see, they want your income statement, profit and loss statement, and your cash flows. So as you see here, an emphasis is on the cash. Cash flow, as it says here, is king. Why? Well, because without cash, we cannot operate. And what I'm showing you here is, well, the top reasons that startups fail, other than the first one, which is may come to a surprise that there's no market need. I'm not going to go into that, but I will focus on running out of cash is the second reason where businesses go out, which means they don't even have a chance to survive. This is from CBI Insights. I recommend that you actually check this site out because it has a lot of good things on it, very useful for entrepreneurs, such as on the bottom here on the slide, you could see what's called a post-mortem. They publish this every quarter of the year, and it gives you the background of companies that have failed. And there are obviously different reasons, the business model, no market need, but some has to do with not being able to be profitable or running out of cash. So it would be good for you to explore that. Why the cash is king? Because as I said in the beginning, to develop my idea, right, at the pre-startup phase, to develop my app, to develop my product, my prototype, to show it to people, that takes money till I get that proof of concept. So this is money that we have to be spending to bring it to some point, and that money clearly, I mean, is money that the entrepreneurs are really putting in, unless they win in an entrepreneurship contest and they could find this cash a little bit to get the proof of concept. So in other words, we're only paying money out at this stage, okay? And we're still paying money out even once we launch our operations and start selling, because we're not going to be selling enough in the beginning to cover our costs. So that's why the cash flow problem is so critical. Now, can we do, as I said, anything to help that? Well, we have to keep in mind that we need to try as much as possible to have that extra surplus of cash, to have cash available on hand while we're trying to minimize the cash that we need to pay out to acquire the resources that we're going to need. But, you know, things happen in reality. Unexpected costs might come up. Okay, maybe I can't get the credit that I was expecting. So we should try to stretch out the cash that we have as much as possible. In the beginning, try to get things for free, use our network, you know. We get our friend to do a study for us who's an engineer, and then, you know, we'll pay him back somehow, some way in the future. Try to, in other words, to minimize this cash that we get. Is there any way we could get cash up front from selling to the early adopters? I mean, these are good old bootstrapping methods. This is about trying to minimize the cash that we have to pay. So like I said, buy used stuff, lease, not to buy. Can we get any payments in advance from customers? Can we minimize, control the costs at the startup phase? And that's why we don't start by saying, I'm going to rent offices and I'm going to hire people, because once you do that, you're locked in. That's the operational lock-in, and you have fixed costs that you have to be paying. So these are things that we have to be very careful with. Clearly, you know, there's so many things we could do not to have facilities, whether we are in an incubator, in a co-working space, at least to cut back on some of these startup expenses. Use interns that are paid by the government or for free to help us in our work, whatever we can to minimize the cash outlay at that stage, these early critical stages, because if we run completely out of money, you understand that then we can't really go forward with that. Even if we win money in a contest, there's only so much and it'll take us so far. So we have to try to make the best use of what we have. As far as preparing the budget here, the cash, the liquidity that we have really depends on that money that's coming in and the money that's going out. So At the early stage, we don't have money coming in other than the money that we're putting in, but money, as I said, is already going out. Once we start selling, money's coming in, money's going out to cover the costs of doing business or any other things that we have, like paying our trade creditors for whatever we've purchased on credit. But what we have to do is to plan this, because the difference between the cash receipts and the cash payments show us our net cash, what's available on hand. And depending on how much cash we had to begin with, we get our ending cash. And that available cash, when we're looking at it, shows whether I have a liquidity problem or not. So when I'm saying this in advance, the point is that I should try to minimize maybe possibly the money that I'm paying out. Can I delay them? Can I minimize some of them? Can I receive money quicker in advance? If I could do that, that's once I start launching the operations, because if I have a liquidity problem, how am I going to continue operating? We may be allowed not to make payments. We will owe money, but up to a point. And how far can we go sustaining operations without making the payments that we need to make? Clearly, that brings us to a halt. It's the cash that we're running out. And we have to be very careful with that. Even today, even businesses that are successful, don't think that only concerns startups. The situation with COVID today, I mean, the fact that so many businesses have lost revenue, and after shutting down for so much time during the lockdown periods, you understand that kind of changes things. And they're locked in because they have certain costs that they have to try to change, if they can, some of their fixed costs, cut back on some of the costs. So this thing about liquidity is an ongoing struggle. So it's not only at the pre-startup or startup, it's a continuous struggle. And today businesses have to sort of look at their cash very closely. And I'm not talking about a month, I'm not exaggerating here, on a weekly, if not even on a daily basis, and kind of see what they could do to preserve some of that cash. So it's trying to collect sooner, try to delay some of the payments, try to sort of, cut back on certain expenditures that are not necessary, whatever we can do to free up some cash, because cash and liquidity is the biggest challenge. Moving on, the profit and loss and the income statement, clearly it shows sales, the revenue we're earning from selling our products and services, and the cost of doing business, the so-called operating expenses that we have. And we see initially that if we're selling products, of course, we have cost of goods sold, which is the unit cost of the goods that we've sold. Seeing the income statement laid out, that's the gross profit. Clearly, that's the first level of profit. It has to do with our pricing. You understand? Revenue is what? The price we're charging and the units sold, if we're talking about products, right? So that depends on how much is that cost and how much is our price. Hopefully the price allows us to earn a profit margin at the gross level that's sufficient and allows us to cover our operating expenses and earn the profit. So putting together the financials, the cash flows, the cash budget, and the income statement is not the difficult part. The difficult part is coming up with these numbers and revisiting these numbers until they look right and trying to be realistic. So it's important to be conservative about our sales, not to be very optimistic, and our costs should kind of be a little bit, I would dare say, even inflated partially, because, to be more realistic, instead of showing high margins that are unrealistic for us, and investors don't like that either. So this is what our income statement would look like if we were buying and selling or making goods. Our operating expenses, as you see, determines the operating profit, which is the core profit, and then whatever else we have, like interest expense or other revenue, gives us our bottom profit. That's our income statement. investors expect to see a profit and loss and income statement when we're projecting, even when we're doing normally a pitch. So the costs now, there are all kinds of costs running the business, okay? So we have to sort of look at those because some of the costs we will see shortly are fixed. We have that lock-in, and some of the costs are variable. And the good thing about variable costs is if we sell, they increase proportionately with sales, but the fixed costs are fixed, which means if I sell 0 or I sell within a range 5,000 units, those costs don't go away. I have to make the payment. I have the commitment there. So that's why I'm going to show you the income statement presented a little differently, which is very useful when you're computing the break-even point. So all the different costs, you know, looking at them, the different types of costs that we have and considering them, and these costs will help us when we have them in our startup list, the startup expenses, the pre-startup. Some of these are costs that are incurred before we start operations. We should distinguish between the costs, the money we have to spend before we launch versus the ongoing operating expenses once we launch, because some confuse the two. They're two separate things, okay? On my income statement, when I start selling, I only show the costs that are incurred, will be incurred in order to operate the business. And clearly it's good to have some, you know, benchmarks, which you could have from the different types of businesses. There are a lot of sites where you could get access to the benchmarks on the cost structure, which are very helpful. Otherwise, you have to look at similar businesses and what they're doing. What are the types of costs and their percentages? Other things that are very important about, you know, as I said, when we're projecting sales, I said it's the selling price, but it's these units. And projecting units, we have to be very careful because by being overly optimistic, you understand that the profit figures then that we're showing are totally unreliable. So we have to consider this very carefully, both the prices and the quantities that we're projecting, the unit sales, as well as the costs, to consider them as carefully as possible. So there are other things that are very important here, you know, because the estimated number of units, I'm just going to put a figure on my income statement, but how do I come up with these units? What are the underlying assumptions? Which is one of the things that investors are going to ask you when you present your pitch. They look at your revenue figure, they say, okay, what are you basing this on? What are your assumptions behind this? And your assumptions are, you know, looking at the competition and what they're doing and how attractive your value proposition is. How are you going to be selling the products to your customers, through which channels? Your marketing efforts even are important there. In other words, how quickly are you going to be acquiring your customers? And all of these things matter. Let's say you're a service and you have a subscription. We have cases where, realistically speaking, customers drop the service. They don't want it. That's a churn. I have to take that into account. I have to try to be realistic. I'm signing up 100 people, but every month, guess what? I'm losing 10%. Oops, that's a problem. And I have to take that into account. I have to consider why I'm losing them, which is another issue. But then I have to take that into account when I'm projecting my revenue. These are important metrics for startups, other than just putting together, you know, the financial reports. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with this, the so-called crossing the chasm, which is a Greek word, incidentally, means the gap. And what is this about? It's when I'm making those projections, you know, of sales, part of that is how quickly am I going to get that early majority. So if I'm showing very high growth rate, so which a lot of young entrepreneurs do, you know, they say I'm going to capture a big percentage from year 1. In year 2, I have phenomenal growth of, I don't know, 20-30%, or just quoting something here for the sake of the argument. Well, what are we basing this on? We have to be, as I said, realistic. Where is that figure coming from? Am I going to capture that early majority from the start? Is that realistic? Or if I'm only capturing the innovators in the beginning and it's going to take a while, I can't be showing high sales if I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, so we have to be very careful with these sales projections, extremely careful, to try to be as realistic as possible, taking all of these things that I mentioned earlier into account, because we don't know, you know, eventually the actual figures will prove the truth, but we still have to project figures, and it's good to be conservative unless we have good, sound evidence that customers are dying to buy our product, which may allow us to be a little more optimistic there. Okay, so as I was saying before, be careful with these high growth percentages from one year to the next in projecting the revenue. Very careful with projecting very high profit margins that are unrealistic, because it means maybe we haven't addressed our costs very carefully. All of a sudden we're seeing our sales to increase, but guess what? Our costs remain the same. And that means maybe we haven't considered carefully the fixed and variable costs. Okay. When we're growing also, we may need additional assets. Okay. And when we have additional assets, that also these assets to be used, they may require additional expenses that we have to consider. So we have to be very careful when we're growing the revenue to show how we're growing those costs. Okay. So all of these things are very important. As I already said, you know, looking at the projections, are they realistic to start with, the growth that we're projecting, and our cost figures, because that's when only those profit figures that we're projecting make any sense. And of course, these vary from sector to sector. That's why it's very important to have some contact with the sector that would belong to. What are the profit margins in these different sectors? Okay. As I already said, the costs are fixed and variable, and some costs have even characteristics of both. So very helpful is to present the income statement in this format in the beginning. When I subtract my variable costs, which may include some marketing costs, from the sales, I get what's called the contribution margin. And it's called contribution because from this money that's left, I have to cover those fixed costs that I have. And if this contribution margin, the money that remains after I subtract the variable costs, is equal to the fixed cost, guess what? I'm at the break-even point. I'm not making any profit. If there's something left, I'm profitable. And that's very helpful in computing the break-even point, which is something that we ought to do. So the break-even point is where, as we understand, the revenue, the sales figure equals the cost. There's nothing left. That's break-even. If I can't be profitable, at least I should try to break even, because if I'm not breaking even, it means that the money that I'm bringing in is not enough to cover what I have to pay to cover my expenses. Okay, and that even presents a problem for liquidity. It's not only about profitability. That's why this is critical, to know at least when I won't need any extra money, because where is this extra money going to come from to be able to allow us to operate, to continue operating until we turn profitable? So a very easy way of computing using the contribution margin that I explained to you, and what I just said about the contribution margin is to actually divide your fixed costs by your contribution margin per unit. That's another easy way of computing the break-even units. Contribution margin reminding you that it's the difference between the selling price and the variable cost. And the variable cost does not only include the cost to buy it if it's about a product. It could also concern marketing costs, distribution costs per unit, but they are variable. That's why it's very useful. And you do this, it's shown even on the canvas. It says fixed costs and variable costs, to look at which costs are fixed and variable. And actually, while I'm saying that, it's good to try to have as few fixed costs at that early stage as possible, to postpone the commitment to fixed costs until as much as possible. Because as you see, it's easier to come close to the break-even point, or in the beginning when we don't have the cash, to have less cash to pay out. So the break-even is something that, you know, we ought to look at. And clearly, showing it in a graph, it's where the costs intersect, right, at that level where the costs equal the revenue, as we see here, and above that it's profit, below that is a loss. So we'd like at least to try to avoid the loss area, or to have it for a shorter period. That's why a lot of companies run out of cash. So yeah, we might be planning and planning and planning, and still the numbers aren't working, which means we have to go back and keep revisiting all of these things back and forth, prices, costs, profits, liquidity, as much as we can. And even so, we'll be doing that. It doesn't mean we're going to get it entirely right, but we have to keep planning for it and making the necessary changes in order to try to avoid, at least to have the liquidity problem. When we're looking at our model now, I'm taking you back to the model, you know, I'm talking about how easy it is for a customer to switch. In other words, if we're making it difficult for a customer to switch once they're locked in, we're keeping them longer, which has to do with that churn rate that I was talking about. Our revenue, guys, is it one transaction, or is it recurring revenue coming back for more and more? Do we earn money before we spend? Okay, yes. Is that possible to get that cash up front, as I said, while we're spending, or at least get some? These are good points that help our liquidity and our profitability. Our cost structure, which is what I was saying to you now. Do I have a lot of fixed costs, or do I have fewer fixed costs and more variable costs, which makes more sense as much as possible? Can I get others to do some of the work, which means my partners? Because yes, if I give some work, some of the activities, I'm outsourcing to the others, I'm sharing the profit, but I don't have to incur the cost. So the reason why I mention all of this is going back and looking at my model. It's back and forth, iterating from my model to the financial plan and back to the model, and making sure this looks good and makes sense as much as possible. So to put it bluntly, it's not easy, guys. I mean, it's a challenge. Okay, I got to get it right. The revenue, the model, how I'm going to make the money, my cost structure has to be right, but also how much it's going to cost me to acquire the customer. Because if I'm going to acquire 10 customers and I have to spend a lot of money, I would rather, you know, have fewer customers and spend less if at that stage. You understand, the customer acquisition is very important. So in regards to a little bit on the cost structure and pricing, when we're looking at our model, the model, depending on how we've designed it, if I'm looking at it being cost driven, as we say, trying to minimize the cost. Why? Because I'm a cheap alternative. So I'm trying to project myself as the value proposition that is provides the lowest cost. If I'm doing that, you understand, everything is cost driven. My focus is on the cost and lowering the cost without compromising on the quality. On the other hand, depending on my value proposition, it could be that I'm going for, you know, something highly customizable, personalized service, premium value. Then my model is value driven. So the emphasis that we put on the costs are different there. Okay, so these are all the things that we have to look at. Again, Is my model cost driven or is it value driven? If it's cost driven, I have to be very careful with these costs and look at them, look at the fixed and look at the variable. Can I achieve economies of scale? Possibly. The marginal unit cost to be going down. It depends. This is an issue that has to do with volume. Looking at the resources and the activities, remember, in business, performing an activity, if I perform an activity, I incur the cost. And how I perform the activity, also I incur a cost that could be higher or could be lower. So it's not only whether I will undertake the activity, I'm going to do this in-house, it's how I'm going to do it, which has to do with the quality of the output and the resources that are needed, the time and money. I could be doing this in a wasteful manner, to put it this way. So there are issues about, should we be doing this or a partner should be doing that? If we do this, we got to do it efficiently. Get the quality of the output that we need, but not to be wasteful and inefficient. All of these add to the costs, okay? And that's an ongoing struggle. It's not only for startups, it's for all businesses at all times, okay? The things that we saw about the costs, right? Keeping an eye on our fixed and variable costs and whether we could have economies of scale or scope, you know. As far as pricing, again, it depends. It depends really, right? Because a lot of companies go with, they focus on, let me find my cost and I add a margin to that, the so-called markup, cost plus markup. So cost is 1, I mark up 40%, it makes my price 140, if you're with me on that. That's a very traditional way of costing, actually, the cost plus markup. But other ways is to look at value-based pricing, and this has to do with if customers' perceived value is high, I could charge. So if I'm selling a premium service or I'm selling somebody that people need badly, as we know, I don't need to look at cost plus markup. I could charge a premium price there, okay? So that's a different approach. We're not that focused on the cost because it comes from the outside and what customers are willing to pay for this badly needed, as we say, it solves the migraine pain, as we say in entrepreneurship, of the customer. So that's value-based, really. It depends what we're going to be looking at there. So what are we talking about here? Having a little trouble this slide proceeding. There we go. It's kind of stalling. I apologize. It's been slow in changing that. So it's cost-based, it's value-based. Another way, pricing, the competition, because I have to look at that. And if I'm not the sole provider in the market, because I have to consider that, I'm looking at what they're pricing. I'm looking at our offering vis-a-vis what they're offering. I may be able to charge a higher price, but if my offering is not distinctly different, hopefully it is, otherwise I'm risking other things. How can I take the market share from them if we're all the same pretty much? We're slicing up the pie to smaller pieces, but competitive pricing, I have to look at that, okay? Volume pricing, it depends. Then we're talking about, you know, the volume of users, and then we could afford to charge, you know, lower prices if that could be the case. Not usually applicable though. So if we're talking about other pricing, depending on, I'm sure you've heard about, a portfolio is a mix of markups. In other words, we have products that or services that we charge a higher markup or a lower, which means they're more or less profitable. In other words, we don't have the same flat approach of charging the same because we're making a different profit margin. And that's, for example, what a lot of businesses do. The razor blade model, I'm sure you're familiar with that. You've heard about that because it's a model, a business model too. You're giving something free, but then you're making money, or very cheap, and then you're making money from everything else that people have to buy, like the razors, as we know, the blades and all of that. Subscription, So these are the different things, but we have to consider really carefully what is doable in our market, because we might be looking at similar businesses and how they do this in the UK or in the US, which might work, but we have to look at our local needs. So maybe, for example, subscription is not ideal in the, I don't know, the Greek market or the Romanian market for X reasons. So we have to be careful on that pricing model. Okay, so it's the competition, the norms in the market. It depends whether we are, you know, the only, as I said, provider, which means take it or leave it, so to speak, but we have to be very careful with that, because that could be short-lived. In other words, these high prices that we're going to charge initially, because next thing we know, we have competition, and that, you know, doesn't last forever. So these are all things that we have to consider when we're setting the price. Okay, so I don't know, Adrian, I don't know if you're here.
Yeah, I'm here. Well, we can wrap up more or less. I mean, if you...
I just want to point out, I don't have time to say a few things about other metrics, but I will just show you this slide. All of these accounting, by, you know, by all means, I'm totally in favor of what I showed you, you know, the cash flow, the cash budget, the income statement, because even if you don't like it and if you want to apply for funds, you're going to have that in your pitch, in your business plan. So you have to come to terms with that. But as startups, it's important to look at other startup metrics, like the customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost to acquire the customer, each new customer? The customer lifetime value, how much profit the customer is going to bring me for as long as I have them as a customer, or per unit, depending on what kind of business I am. Recurring revenue, am I getting any recurring revenue? The churn, we have to be careful with how many customers I'm losing, because I'm filling in the bucket and then I'm losing the water customers. The monthly burn rate, which is used, it's about liquidity, but this is the term we use. Investors ask you, what is your burn rate? And that means if I have 10,000 cash available and my burn rate is 2, I have to pay out 2,000, my cash is going to last for 5 months. That's my burn rate. How long that cash to sustain my operations is going to last. And that's something that we have to be monitoring very you know, carefully and constantly, and investors expect that we know that when we're talking to them. Okay, so these, I wish I had a bit more time to go into the customer acquisition, you know, the lifetime value and things of the sort, but these are things that, you know, are also important to track, because the last thing I'll tell you is, if it costs a lot of money, and even successful startups had faced challenges here, the cost to acquire the customer versus a lifetime value, if that's not balanced, it's like tipping it over unfavorably, which means I'm going to have a hard time being profitable. And it's about the customer acquisition costs as well, because in order to attract sales, to attract customers, we try to spend as much as we can, and even investors push startups in that direction because they want to show aggressive growth, increase in revenue. And they do this in the unorthodox way by putting a lot of money into marketing to acquire the customers, and only if the customers don't last, they drop us or don't last for as much as we expect, and we have a churn, we could be operating at a loss just because of that, let alone to cover all the other costs that we have. So this is something that, you know, a lot of startups, they fall into this. That's why it's good to monitor how much the customer is bringing me in versus how much I'm actually spending to acquire him, and for how long. So I hope, Adrian, now, as you said, we could sort of
yeah, well, thank you very much. I believe this was very, very insightful, and it actually linked very well with some of the previous questions related to assessing the business models from various, of course, from various perspectives. And yes, you did provide a very inclusive, let's say, financial insight into what the prospective entrepreneurs need to be aware of. And especially for the 15 ESRs that will have to do their exercise, let's say, during this week, this definitely clarified some of the things, and hopefully they can always go back to this presentation, to this recording actually, and try to extract any useful elements in case they do not fully remember everything. And of course, in the meantime, if someone has a question, we will just contact you, yeah, without any problem throughout the entire week. We offer this solution, this opportunity to everyone that has specific questions related to this session, as well as to all the other sessions. So thank you very much, Violetta. This was very, very insightful. Thank you for your time, and feel free, of course, to tag along this week for a more interesting sessions. Thank you very much, Violetta.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much, and I hope really your the rest of your schedule is very inspiring for you, and those of you that are considering going into business. I think that will be an invaluable experience. So thank you very much.
This is the end goal. This is the end goal.
Exactly.
Thank you.
To attract more people. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, so basically we are at the end of the first day. As you saw in the beginning from the presentation of Professor Kitikidis, where he actually introduced what is going to happen during this entire week, you saw that there is a very well-formed, let's say, sequence of well-thought presentations grouped per day on various topics, meaning that today and tomorrow the focus is to build an entrepreneurship crash course in two specific parts covering various elements that prospective entrepreneurs have to be aware of. And tomorrow we will actually continue with the part 2, looking into specific elements related to operational planning and market launch, innovative marketing strategies for promoting circular and sustainable businesses, framing innovation in a post-growth world, and implications for innovation development, of course. And we will close tomorrow with pitching strategies, just to give you in a nutshell the key elements that you will see from tomorrow, and especially for the external people that are attending and that will not, let's say, join the afternoon session from today. Tomorrow, basically, the presentations will complete. Okay, we'll complete the basic knowledge required to successfully engage, let's say, in launching a startup. While the other days, specifically Wednesday, we'll look at a bit more advanced elements related to responsible innovation development processes and how this can be infused into the startups and into the way the innovations are being developed, simply because, as you have already seen today from the presentation of Ms. Fisher, impact monitoring is one of the key things. But the idea is not to only measure the impact of what you do in a post-launch element. The idea is to look at the impact starting from the innovation and from the product or service development process. So in the sense that there are ways to ensure that you'll have the impact even without only focusing on measuring the impact that you have in a post-launch environment. And then, of course, on day 4, we will have, again, the clear showcases from various startups that are very successful in everything that they're doing, while in the last day, you can attend various pitching presentations, from the 15 ESRs. Andrea, would you like to add 2-3 more things before we go to the private, let's say, part for the ESRs?
No, that's fine. I think there is a break first, Adrian, if you remind everybody the agenda before the private part. But yeah, I think it has been a fantastic start, very good presentations, very insightful discussions, great questions from the ESRs, so definitely a good start. And so we can probably conclude here the first part of the day, which is also the public facing part of the day. And as I said, we will continue now with the activities which are specifically targeting the ESRs, so their exercises, which will culminate on the business pitches that they will need to develop on Friday. So thank to all the speakers, to all the contributors. It has been a great first day, and have a good break. And we will meet again with the ESRs, I think at quarter to 2 UK time, so quarter to 3 Central European time, for an initial debrief for their collaborative sessions.
Excellent. Thank you very much to everyone.